Today we're going to have a series of 8 guest speakers that are all first alumni and are all going to share their experiences with us. My name is James Liu, and I'll be the main host today. With me, I have Vincent and Justin. And we are all part of the TechnoWizards team 16458. So our team has been in first for 8 years, and this is our 3rd year in FTC. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to chat them to me, Justin, or Vincent. And this is going to go on YouTube, so if you have any problems with stuff going on YouTube, then feel free to message us and we'll take care of that. So first, we're going to have Kristie talk about how FIRST has impacted your choices, and then Andy's going to talk about his Dean List Award, and Dylan's going to talk about his internship and FIRST experience, and then we're going to have a short 30-minute break, and then Patrick is going to talk about some challenges he's experienced in FIRST and how he has overcome those challenges, and then Daniel's going to talk about his career path and skill development. Lyle's going to talk about his college admission journey, and then Leo's going to end it off with some tips for FTC, both on and off the field. So first, let's welcome Kristie. She is an alumni of FTC and was on the MacBots team, and she currently goes to Duke and has an internship right now at General Motors. So, and she's going to talk about her FIRST experience and how FIRST has impacted her life. So please give a warm welcome to Kristie.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction, James. Very excited to be here and to be talking to you guys. So like James, like you mentioned, I was a member of the FTC team MacBots from 2015 to 2019. And I was actually a team captain for my last 2 years. So I actually founded MacBots back in 2012 with 2 other members. And we started out as an FLL team, and we did that for 3 years. And then we kind of transitioned to FTC, and I finished out all of high school on MacBots as an FTC team. And so on MacBots, I started out as a mechanical build lead when we first started in FTC. And I also, contributed a lot with the outreach and scouting side of our team. And for my last 2 years, like I mentioned, I became a co-captain. And I mainly oversaw the outreach side of our team. So all of our outreach events, putting together the technical notebook at the end of the year, and all of that side. But I also still worked a lot with the mechanical design side when I wasn't doing that. So I think just like a brief overview of some of like the most notable moments I had on my robotics team. I think definitely 2 moments that stand out to me would be when we hosted summer camps, both in San Antonio and then also in Laredo, where we invited, local like middle schoolers to come, and we were able to share our experience with robotics with them. And I think another notable experience for us is my team actually advanced to the World Championships in 2019. And we were actually finalists in the robot game. So, being able to actually play robot matches like in Minute Maid Stadium in Houston in front of all the other teams was really like an unforgettable experience. But yeah, so I think I'll just kind of go over like, I think maybe some what we focused on when we were building our robot and kind of what led our team to be successful, some lessons I've learned myself, and then how I've applied these lessons to, like you mentioned, my career and my life in general. Yeah, so like I mentioned, we advanced pretty far in the World Championships my last year with the team. And I think there are really 3 main factors that made our team really successful. So the first one was, I think, one of the most important factors. It was really that we worked really well together as a team. We weren't just a group of 12 people who got together on the weekends to build a robot, but we were actually all really close friends, and we had been working together for years at that point. So, we really knew how to solve disagreements and have like useful, like good conversations and move the team forwards. We also would put aside a lot of time at the beginning of the season to really dissect the game and decide our priorities for the rest of the season, um, especially in regards to the mechanical design part of the robot. And before jumping into brainstorming ideas and designing the robot, we really made sure that we had a roadmap of how to get the most points and how we wanted to achieve that. And finally, I think another really important thing that our team was always doing was that we were always learning. So every year we would learn something new. We would include new technology in our robots, and we always learned as much as we could from our mentors, and basically any experience that we had, we took away as a learning experience. And I think those three main points have really stuck with me throughout my life, and I've learned a lot from first, especially technical skills, but also, to always be learning and to work well as a team. And additionally, I think one thing that was really important that I took away from first was to have really good presentation skills, and not just to be able to talk about what and share that, but also to really be able to know who your audience is and how to target your audience and cater your presentation for a specific group of people. Yeah, and since leaving first, since graduating high school and going off to college and working in the industry, I've constantly been using all of these lessons that I've learned from first. Like from the more technical side, we learned how to prototype our robot and iterate and go through the design process, right? And that was actually one of the first things that I learned in my introductory engineering class in college. So it was really cool to see that like something I'd been doing all throughout high school is actually, what they teach you in college as an engineer. And like I mentioned, the presentation skills come into handy, not just when you're, giving a long formal presentation, but also when you're just talking to your professors or your manager, your boss, and even other students every day in life. And to kind of wrap things up, I'm currently working at General Motors, like James said, as a systems engineer, and it's a really cool job. I get to drive around in the electric Hummers and run tests and see all of the new electric cars that they're doing there. So I kind of take everything that I learned from first with me throughout college and my career.
Yeah, so you mentioned something about the technical notebook and how you've contributed a lot to it on the team. So is there a lot of this engineering notebook stuff in internships and work and just like in college as well? Or is that something that's only in first?
Yeah, no, you definitely see a lot of the similar undertones in college and in work. It's not like you're putting together a 300-page notebook, documenting every single thing that you did that you're doing for college and work, but you definitely, like I've had assignments for college where I have to put together like a technical memo, which is really just like a 2-3 page document on like what a project is, what our team did along the way, what are the main points of our project. So, I definitely see a lot of overlap between a technical notebook and like kind of like project documents that you would see in college and in work.
Yeah, so the skills from just writing the engineering notebooks has really helped you just become a better writer? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think like the technical notebooks in first are a really good way to learn how to write about engineering in like a concise way and in a way that anyone from the outside like looking in on a project can understand easily. So you definitely learn a lot about how to write as an engineer from that.
yeah. And what are some of the skills that you've learned to help you present and become better at presenting?
Yeah, definitely. So like I mentioned earlier, I gave a little bit of an overview of how like important it is to know your audience, right? I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that everyone should take out of first is like when you're giving a presentation, right, you need to know who you're talking to. So a lot of times, when you talk to judges, they might come from a like a technical industry background and they know a lot about engineering, but they might not know the specifics of what your team is doing or what your robot is or what you call certain things on your robot, right? So you need to know how to kind of adapt your knowledge to be able to be understood by everyone, no matter what experience level they have or if they're in your team or outside of your team. And then I think just another really important thing that you learn about presentations from first is how to condense, an entire year's worth of work into, you get like what, 10, 15 minutes in a
Yeah.
presentation. So yeah, it's really important to learn how to prioritize what you want to talk about and how to get the main point across without, going on for a long time.
Yeah, in like the judge interviews in the first, what are some of the main points that like you have to touch on?
Yeah, in the judge interview, I've been out of first for for 3 or 4 years now, so I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar now. But we would talk a lot about, we'd give like an overview of who we are, what our team has done, both on the mechanical and on the outreach side. And then you kind of want to like wrap it up and be like, this is why we're doing everything. This is the impact we've made.
So you mentioned something about summer camp. Our team has hosted a summer camp just in this summer very recently. And what are some tips to make like a better summer camp and to have more engagement?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's hosting a summer camp is always something that's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to entertain like a lot of kids and get the knowledge across. But I think it's really important to like keep in mind that you are working with usually like younger kids, right? Is that what your summer camp is geared towards? Yeah, and and yeah, and this kind of goes back to the point of knowing who your audience is, right? So when you're working with kids, you want to stay patient and kind of inspire kids to use their creativity and not kind of box them in too early on, right? So you definitely want, like with summer camps, I think it's really great to design a curriculum where the kids get to really do they have a lot of freedom, right? So they can use their imagination and their ideas, and you're kind of just there to guide them on how to get that done.
Okay. And going back to the judging rooms, how similar are first judging rooms to like actual job interviews or like internship interviews?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think they're actually like really similar, like when you go into a judging room, you're in front of a panel of maybe like 3 judges or 2 or 3 judges, right? And you have like 10, 15 minutes to really basically pitch your team to them, right? And I think it's really similar when you approach a college or a job interview, except instead of you being in front of like a panel of judges and talking about, um, and like giving a very formal presentation, instead you're in front of maybe 1 or 2 other people and you're doing more of like a Q&A, more of a conversation. But in the same way, you're really like trying to pitch yourself and you know put your best foot forward in these interviews.
Yeah, and what would be like the best way to pitch yourself forward in job interviews? Is it to like show how much you've done, or like is it to like show that you know your stuff? Or
Yeah. Those are all good things, to show what you've done and that you are knowledgeable and you know the material. But I think especially when you're starting out in a career, you're not going to know everything. In fact, you might only really know like 5-10% of what the job entails, right? Because you only learn so much from school. You learn a lot more just on the job. But I think it's definitely good to give like an overview of that. And then I think one thing that really helped me during my interviews was to just show like my passion, right? I love engineering and it's what I want to do, for the rest of my life. it's like actually something that I'm really passionate about. And when you talk about engineering and like the job that you're applying for in that way, it's going to stand out to an interviewer.
Mhm. And I'm really curious about your internship at General Motors. Can you specify more of what you do on a day-to-day basis? And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. So I'm around like 10 weeks into this internship right now. And, I'm working as a systems engineer intern at GM. And so basically what the systems engineers do is they set like they verify and write requirements for, all the cars and all the products that come through GM. And usually for like a specific, section of the car, you're not writing like requirements for the entire car. But what my team does specifically is we work with electric vehicles and we work with motion controls. So we focus a lot on electric all-wheel drive systems.
Mhm.
So I've been able to do a lot of simulation work to kind of set those requirements, right? We look at like, oh, like if you have a car and there's two electric motors in the back, if there's a little bit of difference in torque between those two electric motors, like what's going to happen to the car and like what's the limit of like the difference of torque you have. So that would be like an example of kind of how we set requirements. And then I also do a lot of in-vehicle testing, like I mentioned, mostly with the Hummer EVs. And with that, we do a lot of verifying, right, that those requirements are met. So we go out and run a bunch of tests just to make sure that the car is performing the way that it's supposed to. And then we also work a lot with the safety teams to make sure that if there's any safety issues that come up, we resolve them, right? We track them down, we figure out what's causing it, and then we talk to all the right people to get that resolved.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you do a lot of simulations. Does your experience with FIRST have anything that helps you with simulations and testing?
Yeah, definitely. I think on a more technical side, right, first really gave me a really good foundation on how to code. I didn't ever work on the coding team like formally, but whenever I was in FLL, like Lego League, we did a lot of, the FLL coding is like kind of like blocks and you kind of like just drag and drop blocks. But I think that did a really good job of teaching me the foundations of like code, like logic and structure. And so we definitely use a lot of coding when we run simulations. I'm not building any like vehicle models myself in a simulation, but I do have to like write MATLAB and write scripts to process data and record all that data.
Mhm.
So definitely the technical skills come in handy.
Yeah, so in FIRST, we mainly use Java, but what main language do you use in General Motors and in your jobs?
Yeah. So that's a good question. It depends a lot on what job you have and what company you go to. But um, for my previous internship, I worked as a software engineer for a like startup car insurance company. But there we used it was a lot of full stack web development. So it was like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Ruby. So those are more like web development languages. And then at GM, I've used a lot of MATLAB, but mainly that's like to process data, right? That's not the actual code that's going into the vehicle.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I know they do a lot of coding in like C and Python. So I think though, if you know Java, it's a really good foundation. And if you know one language, it's easier to pick up on the other languages. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, are there any more questions? Yeah. What would you like to work on in the future after internships?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a mechanical engineering computer science double major right now at Duke, I really like the intersection of mechanical engineering and computer science and how software and hardware play into each other. So I think, the automotive industry is a great place for that because everything is moving towards electric vehicles now, and those are all extremely code dependent, right? But I think in the future, I think it would be really cool to work at like a smaller, maybe startup, like autonomous vehicle or electric vehicle company. Yeah, so there's a lot of options out there. Not too sure yet what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I know you were in first for a while, right? You're an alumni, so you've been doing the engineering notebooks for like years, right? Every year you make one, right?
Yep.
So it's weird because ever since COVID hit, we're not doing engineering notebooks anymore, and now instead we do a 15-page what is it called, portfolio. Do you think that it's a bad idea, and you think we should switch back to doing engineering notebook, or you think it undermines the value of like how important a notebook is for first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the notebook, when we did like our notebooks used to be really like literally like 200, 300 pages of just like detailed, like every single meeting, what we did, kind of. So I think there's a lot of value to that because it teaches you a lot of, like version tracking, kind of making sure you're taking meeting notes, making sure that you're you're writing down and logging every single thing that you do. But I also think that on like a presentation side or like a final report side, that the 15-page portfolio really uh, is it's closer to what you would see in like college or in industry, right? Because no one really has time to read through 200, 300 pages of just like every single day what we did, right? So I think like I think it teaches you a lot to have to fit an entire year's worth of information into 15 pages, right? And to try to get the most important points across. So I think there is a lot of value to that. You know, uh, I think it's a good direction that First is taking. I think maybe somewhere in between would be like a great compromise, like, not having a 200, 300 page detailed notebook like that, but maybe having, 30 pages so you can expand a little bit more. But, it's a give and take. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
I got a question from someone. They said, "How did your team decide your engineering notebook template when you're making it?"
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if well, we did have like a template kind of that we followed. I think it was something like as far as meeting notes go, because we would record all of those in our engineering notebook when it was 200, 300 pages. That was something that we just set like a long time ago and we just kind of followed it all throughout. But usually we would have like a few people who were like really hands-on with the engineering notebook, right? Like that was kind of like left for them and it was kind of up to them to decide. But I think formatting, as long as you, or like a template, as long as you keep it clean and professional and you get the point across and it's not too distracting, like it should probably be a good format. Yeah.
And do you think you should keep like templates word heavy or more kind of just like simplistic?
Yeah, I think that goes back to knowing your audience, right? Because in a situation like First, where judges are looking at like, I don't know, like 50 different notebooks and they have like an hour to look at them, right? They're not going to have time to sit there and read like 15 pages of text, right? So that's probably a situation in where you would want to use more graphics and try to get the point across and maybe like keywords and graphics, right? And you definitely need text as well, right? Because it can't all be pictures, because then no one's gonna really know what you did, right? But then in a situation where you're in like college and you're giving like a report, like a project report or a lab report or something, that's something where you want to be more text heavy because a professor is actually going to sit and read through that.
Um, Thank you, Kristie, for joining us.
Yeah.
Is it okay if we share your contact information at the end of the slideshow?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish you guys the best of luck, and to everyone out there who's interested in FIRST and robotics, like definitely give it a shot. Yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So next we will have, oops. Next we'll have Andy Lee on his Dean List application and just tips on his interviews and just Dean List in general. So Andy's a FTC alumni from MacBots as well, and currently he's attending Harvard, just a really good school. And he's going to talk about his Dean List application process and tips for a better Dean List interview. So please welcome Andy.
All right, so thank you very much, James, and thank you very much to TechnoWizards for hosting this event, inviting all of us here. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Okay, let's talk about Dean's List. So everybody at first knows about Dean's List, sort of like high and mighty, mystical, like sort of application pool, whatever, right? Ultimately, Dean's List is really about your dedication to FIRST. Right, it's sort of like a celebration of your achievements and how much you've contributed to FIRST's mission. And that is ultimately what you're trying to show, what you're trying to demonstrate, what you're trying to sort of highlight during your interviews. All right, so the process goes something like this. Come your sophomore or junior year in high school, as you're part of FIRST, your team gets to nominate 2 members to be part of the Dean's List selection process, right? So you have a mentor, you'll have a coach, you'll have some person write a letter of recommendation for you, right? And then that, along with your sort of profile, gets sent to the judging panel, and then they'll offer you an interview. And you only get one interview, right? It'll be at your sort of league competition at your like local sort of level. And then you have your interview, right? And the only thing that goes on from there is your letter of recommendation and your interview notes, right? So super important to remember that you get one shot at an interview and you get one rec letter to carry you the entire way. So what does this mean? Well, obviously your rec letter has to be pretty spot on, right? Pretty stellar. And I really like to think about the interview as sort of like a almost college interview process, right? So when you apply to college, you get a chance to interview with alumni of that college, and they take notes, and then they send those notes back to the admissions office to attach with your profile. Now, while the college interview isn't a surefire way of getting you accepted into that college, right? It definitely can be a detrimental or a harm against you if you don't do well in that interview, right? So it's not guaranteed to get you in, but it can definitely get you out. The Dean's List interview is very much the same, right? Those interview notes are important, but in comparison to what you've done in the past and your rec letter, right, the interview notes may not be the sort of most important part of getting you in. But if your interview notes are not good, rest assured, right, you will not be getting it. And that's not to say like it's this like, oh, big elitist thing, or oh, like, you know, not everybody can get it because I'm that good or whatever, right? It's just like, it's not like that. It's just that the interview is not the most important part of the Dean's List application process, even though it is very important. All right, 2 steps, right? Rec letter and interview. Now, arguably, those 2 steps are less important than everything that you've done beforehand, right? So for Dean's List, right, you have to remember that they're choosing people who are sort of the cream of the crop, right? The best people in FIRST who have contributed the most, right? Who have really made FIRST's mission their own and really, really made, you know, FIRST and outreach everything that they're passionate about and everything that they do, right? So when you go into that application process, you have to consider what you've done for FIRST, right? What outreach activities you've done, right? If you've given any talks, presentations, seminars, podcasts like these, right? If you've hosted any like summer camps, right? Educational series, how much have you mentored other teams? How much have you reached out to professionals, right? How much have you really connected your team with the community and the entire world around you, right? Because that's what FIRST is ultimately about. It's not just about the robots. It's not just about the building, the competition, the programming, right? It's about how you learn and how you help other people learn and grow as people, right? So that is the most important thing to remember when you're going into the application process, when you're going into the interview, right? When you're doing everything, you have to remember what FIRST's mission is, because that's how they choose who gets Dean's List. Okay, so now for a bit more about the sort of interview process. It's a pretty standard interview, I would say. I think 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. You go in, there's 2 judges. You might even know them if they're like part of your league competition, right? And they sort of just ask you some standard interview questions and some more FIRST outreach-based interview questions, right? So standard interview questions might be something like, you know, the most common, the one everybody dreads, right? Tell me about yourself, right? Because tell me about yourself is the hardest interview question, arguably, in my opinion, because it's just so open-ended and there's a million ways you can take your interview based on how you answer that first question, right? My tip for you, keep it short, but keep it interesting, right? When you answer, tell me about yourself, you know, start with the basics, right? Your name, your grade, your team, right? And then go into a bit more FIRST related stuff or interview related stuff, right? Like, you know, I love FIRST. Here's what I've done for FIRST, right? I like this event, or one of my accomplishments I'm the most proud of is like this summer camp that I did, or I really love teaching young children about robotics, right? Something like that, which makes you seem interesting and gives you a nice little springboard for your interview to continue on. And of course, if you want to put in a bit of humor as well, right, or put in a bit of a bit of fun into the interview, right, to make it less pressuring, to make it a bit more conversational, now would be the best time to do that as well, right? So tell me about yourself, right? I would highly recommend you practice it, right? Don't make it sound too rehearsed, don't make it sound too forced, but definitely know what you're going to talk about and practice it very, very well.
Yeah. A quick question.
Yeah.
So in the tell me about yourself, what direction would you go for the best answer? Is it like to show how much you've done, to show like how humble you are, or like which direction would be the best one to go?
Okay, so arguably, I would recommend that you, in the interview room is not where you want to be humble, right? Obviously, don't be cocky or arrogant about what you've done, but you definitely don't want to downplay your accomplishments, right? So you can start off by saying who you are, your team, like the basics, right? And then you say, I've done so many, like this many years of outreach with FIRST, right? Or this many events, right? Put in some numbers to make it seem a bit more realistic, a bit more concrete, and give them like a better idea of what you've done, because people tend to remember numbers a lot more than they do sentences or longer words. So yeah, you can give them a brief rundown of all the events you've done, right? And then you can maybe highlight a particular event that you sort of want to hint them to talk at more, right? So if you have like, let's just say like a summer camp, right? So your team hosted a summer camp, you led the summer camp, you created the curriculum, you did all this stuff, right? You want to highlight that, right? You want to highlight what you've done and how much you've loved doing it, right? So if you're particularly proud of an event, right, you would say, okay, there's this event that I love. It's this summer camp, you know, I did all of this in the summer camp, right? Keep it very short. Don't go too in depth just yet, but you want them to know that you have a lot to talk about and there's a lot that you're passionate about.
Yeah, thank you.
And then you have your other sort of standard questions, almost stuff like they might ask you, if you haven't brought it up already, right? an accomplishment, or what's one thing you did in first that you're most proud of or that you're most excited about. All right, and then that would be your amazing chance to go into that particular event that you just talked about in your how to introduce yourself, right? And when you talk about events, right, people like to use what's called the STAR format, right? And personally, I think it's a bit cheesy to follow it, but it does yield results, right? So what does STAR stand for, right? It's an acronym that stands for situation, task, action, and result. And you want to cover all four of these because they're equally important. So situation is like saying, okay, maybe we had this middle school team in Laredo, Texas, right? Based on my personal experience, right? They didn't have a lot of first education before, or like they didn't have a lot of experience in first beforehand, and they had limited robotics education in middle school, right? And so they met us at a coach's clinic and invited us to go there and talk about it, right? And then you go into T, which is your task, right? So then you would say, okay, so they wanted to host a summer camp, and so we designed an entire summer camp around what they wanted to learn, right? What they wanted to sort of get more experience on, whether it be programming or building or core values activities, right? That kind of thing. Along with the task, you then want to go into action, which is the A, right? And this is super important, right? What you've done really, really matters. And the the interviewers want to hear about what you've done, right? Specifically you, and how you led your team or how you inspired other people through this event or action, right? So stuff like, I designed the curriculum, right? I organized this, I communicated with these coaches, right? I led certain lessons, I organized these activities, right? Like, try to answer things in that format where it's like, I did something, right? Because that really shows that you were invested, you were passionate, and you loved what you were doing to spread first mission. And the R in STAR, which stands for results, is the most important part. You cannot forget about your results. Otherwise, all of your actions just kind of like don't matter, right? Because anybody can talk about what they've done. But what matters is what you've done led to tangible, important, exciting result, right? So stuff like, after we mentored this team, right, they were able to not only have good robot building skills and good presentational skills, but at their local competition, they won like first place, second place in the robot game, right? They scored like judges awards, design awards, stuff like that, right? You want to make sure you highlight your results as much as possible, because that shows that your actions have meaningful, tangible impact on the community in first, right? So remember, STAR format when you're answering pretty much any questions is always a good way to go. Okay, so standard questions like those, and then maybe a bit more sort of Dean's List oriented questions. One of the most significant ones I remember was, if you could describe yourself in just one word, what would it be? And specifically like in the context of Dean's List. So I think I said inspiring, kind of a little cheesy, but I think it had a lot of merit at the time, because I genuinely believed that like I was inspiring, right? And I had a lot of sort of examples to back it up, right? Both in the events that I did, right? Inspiring students to learn more, inspiring students to get involved, right? And even inspiring students to join our robotics team, right? People who didn't have much first experience, right? Or people who didn't have much STEM experience, and inspiring them to be a part of the STEM process and really, really enjoying what FIRST is all about and all it has to offer. Great. Yeah, so questions like those. And then at the very end, they'll always sort of give you some free time to talk about whatever you want. So they'll be like, is there anything else you want to tell us? Ideally, you do want to leave something to say here, because you don't really want to be like, oh, that's it, there's nothing else to me, right? You always want to show that there's always more to you. You want them to feel like you have this sort of ocean of experience and excitement that you're only sort of getting the chance to show a little bit of, but you could talk about a lot more if you had the time, right? You always want to give them that impression that you have so much more to talk about. So in the sort of tone or like, is there anything else you want to talk more about section, feel free to share more experiences or share some sort of like heartfelt personal journey that's important to you, that like really drives you throughout your mission in first, right? So something for me, for example, was like, I believe I said, like personally for me, I think talent doesn't exist, right? So there's no scientific evidence that talent exists. And that's something that I preach whenever I teach students, whenever I mentor people, right? Because that really inspires people to say, okay, I don't need to have like any sort of special background. I don't need to have any talent, right? As long as I work hard, put in my own efforts, right? What we like to call a sort of interior locus of control, right? Inspire people with that mindset, right? It's something that guided me. It's something that I preach. And so that's really helped both myself and everyone that I've come into contact with throughout first, right? So that was something that I talked about, but obviously you're free to come up with your own, sort of just some food for thought.
And is there a limit to how long you can talk to answer each question, or?
Technically, there's not, except for like the hard cutoff limit at the 10 to 15 minutes. However, I would recommend that you don't go on for too long, right? You want to time your answers so that they're sort of in that perfect responses zone, right? So you want to make sure you hit all the 4 things in the STAR format, right? But you don't want to ramble. You don't want to go on too long because then it feels like you're kind of just saying things to fill up space, right? You want to be concise, but you want to cover everything, right? So I think maybe about a minute's response, 1.5 minutes, maybe even 2 minutes, depending on what question they're asking, what response you're giving, right? But you don't want to ramble on for too long. It's the most important part.
You mentioned something about the recommendation letter. How do you find the best person to write the recommendation letter for you?
Great question. Okay, yeah, so rec letters are obviously very important, not only in Dean's List, but in things like college applications, job applications, stuff like that. Ideally, you want to choose someone that's that you've known for a while, that's familiar with you, familiar with your work, familiar with your skills, right? Familiar with your growth, right? And obviously someone who thinks, positively of you, right? Not like, obviously if you've had some, if you're in school and you've not been the best student for a teacher, maybe don't go for them. But like, you want to make sure ultimately that the teacher knows, like, you, or like whoever you're choosing can write about your strengths, right? Make sure they know your strengths, make sure they know what you've achieved, right? Make sure they know like how amazing of a person you are, because if they don't know that, they can't write about that in your rec letter, right? Your rec letter is very, very important, right? Because in your interview, you can talk about how great you are all the time, right? But everybody talks about how great they are in an interview, right? That rec letter is an external reference, which arguably carries more weight than just you by yourself, right? So make sure whoever's writing it is familiar with you, right? They can write about how good you are. Yeah.
And how do you make yourself pop out from the rest of the Dean's List people?
Great question. Okay, so first up, when you're in Dean's List, right, you obviously have to have like some actual things that you've done. Right. And like I would stress quality over quantity, although if you have both quality and quantity, that's best. Right. But even just a few events where you're able to interact closely with other teams, students, like other people in first, right? And then have important, exciting, tangible results from that event, right? That really matters. A lot of people, when they talk in an interview, right, when they introduce themselves, right, they like to talk about what they've done, right, but not what they've achieved, right? So those results at the end of the star format are arguably the most important parts, right? Because that really shows that you accomplished something, right? Not just you saying you accomplished something, but like there's proof that you've accomplished something, right? And I think that really makes you stand out from everyone else if you really, really hammer in on those results.
And as a Dean List winner, what possibilities open up for you once you've gotten the award?
Thinking big, are we? Okay. Yeah, great question. So when you become a Dean's List finalist, you get invited to the sort of Dean's List banquet at the FDC World Championship. So at the banquet, you'll have a chance to listen to some amazing speakers from like some of the top universities around, right? I know MIT and Yale are really, really big on Dean's List winners. Like people from big companies like Qualcomm, DTC also love talking at that Dean's List banquet, right? And if you actually do win the Dean's List award, well, then you kind of just get showered in a bunch of stuff, right? So there's free merch, which is the best part, arguably. You get to really, really interact with some of those college recruiters that are on site there because they love handing you their business card as a Dean's List winner. You get access to the Dean's List Summit, which is sort of like a party hosted every single year for both current and past Dean's List winners. You get some like a bunch of other freebies, like I think some universities might offer you free entrance into their summer programs, stuff like that, right? And of course, you get to tell people that you're a Dean's List winner, right? And I think that, not really in a bragging sense, but in like a, oh, I'm a Dean's List winner because I've sort of shown this dedication to FIRST, right? I've done all these events, right? That is also a great sort of seal of approval, right? Or proof that you've done really, really well in FIRST.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions?
I had one. So in the interview, do you think that you should be only limited to talking about FIRST, or should you also talk about other stuff like I like playing an instrument, or I have hobbies, I like going hiking or something. Is that good for the interview?
Great question. So I think in the interview, you should definitely focus on FIRST, but it's not saying that you can't bring in examples from other places. And arguably, it might even be a good idea to say how your experience in FIRST has applied to activities, areas, interest outside of FIRST, right? So for me, I was big into marching band back in high school, right? And I was also a section leader, or like a sort of student captain in marching band, right? And so I was able to talk about how both my experience with like teaching younger students or mentoring incoming people to FIRST, right, really, really helped me with mentoring incoming band musicians within my section, right? So I think if you can draw those parallels between FIRST and the other activities, it's really, really good to mention that. If you can't, or if it doesn't really apply, then like try not to stress it too much, right? You can mention it, but obviously you want to talk more about your accomplishments in the scope of FIRST.
And how has Dean's List changed you? Like, how has it impacted you?
Great question. I think Dean's List, to be honest, Dean's List was kind of just a continuation of like my love of FIRST and my dedication to FIRST mission, right? Because like when I first joined, right, when I like first became part of my robotics team, I did these outreach events because I genuinely loved doing them, right? It wasn't like, oh, I hosted a summer camp just so I could say it in my Dean's List interview, right? Or like, oh, I created this thing just so I could brag about it in my Dean's List interview, right? Like, no, I genuinely loved doing what I did. within FIRST, right? Like talking to other people, right? Meeting new people, talking to the public about FIRST really, really excited me. But to prepare for that Dean's List interview, right, really, really made me reconsider like what I did, right? Not in like a bad sense. It was still like, oh, I've done all this amazing stuff, right? How do I talk about it well? How do I present it well? How do I make it seem like professional, exciting, all of those things within the span of 10 minutes, right? So preparing for that interview really, really helped me sort of like summarize what I did, condense things into a star format or like a sort of interview savvy, impressive format. And I think preparing for that interview really, really helped me with like college interviews, job interviews, right? Because the principles are all the same, right? You've done something, you're passionate about something. How do you tell other people about your passion, your achievements in a way that they can also say, wow, this guy's really good at what he does, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. So, you go to Harvard University. Whoa, that's like, considered to be the best college basically in the world, right? So, would you say that the Dean List kind of influenced that you got accepted into Harvard?
No need for the flattery. I appreciate it, but thank you. I would say it definitely helped, but it wasn't like a defining, it definitely wasn't the like defining factor, I would say. And it's kind of the same thing with the Dean's List interview, right? Like they're very, very closely related, right? Like it's not really one event that sort of makes or breaks you, right? But it's kind of like a combination of a lot of things that really, really influences how you're perceived by like the interviewers, how you're perceived by the admissions office, right? I think Dean's List is like it's a tangible result, right? So it's like proof. It's like the result that you can show to your interviewers that you've done something really, really well. But I wouldn't say like I got into Harvard purely because I was Dean's List, or like I wouldn't say like without Dean's List I hadn't gotten in, right? Nobody really knows those things, but I would say that while Dean's List helped, it's not like a make it or break it type of deal.
So, would you say that the Dean's List is worth it? Like going through this whole process, taking all this time. Do you think does it pay off in the end?
It does pay off in the end, but I would really, really recommend you to not think about it in that frame, right? Not think about it in like I'm doing this purely because I want it on my resume. I'm doing this purely because I want to sort of apply for college and have this sort of like stamp of approval, right? Because I feel like Dean's List is not about a title. It's not about this sort of out of your way award for you to sort of really like force yourself into, or like force yourself into this hard process to prepare for. I think it really is sort of a culmination of all you achieved in FIRST, right? Like you really shouldn't sort of like force yourself into Dean's List if you don't enjoy what Dean's List stands for, which is how much you embody FIRST's mission. And I would say that the interviewers can really, really tell if that's the case, right? They can really tell if you're there just to get it on your resume versus if you're there because you genuinely love FIRST. So just some food for thought.
Yeah, thank you so much. Does anyone else have any more questions?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much for attending the podcast. It's really helpful just you explaining everything and breaking down the whole process. So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and we just want to say thank you so much. Awesome speak. I love it.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So Dylan is another FTC alumni from Bronkbots, but he participates in FRC, which is a step up from FTC. And currently he goes to college at UTSA, and he's going to talk about his internship experience and how FIRST has impacted his career choices in internships. So please welcome Dylan.
I think he disconnected.
Oh. Can wait for him to connect. Recording.
Gotcha. All right.
Today we're gonna have Dylan talk about some of his internship experiences and how FIRST has impacted his career choice.
Awesome. That's great. Well, hi everybody. I'm Dylan Watson.
I'm Rylee Lippenholtz.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're both alumni of 3481 Brunkbots, and we were also both on a variety of the Brunkbots FTC teams. Our three teams are 4008, 4602, and 6976. Both of us started on the team back in 2014, and we're now in college at UTSA, and alumni and FIRST mentors.
Awesome. So yeah, that's us. That's what we do. Rylee is the primary mechanical mentor for the Brunkbots, and I'm the head programming mentor. So it's a lot of fun. We love FIRST, we love FTC and FRC and everything that we're doing. And we were asked today to talk about both our FIRST experience, what we learned from FIRST, and then how that impacted our internships and our career choices. So I guess we can both go through and just kind of say what we do professionally. I don't know if you want to talk first, Rylee.
Yeah. So I am a marketing management dual major at UTSA. I fell in love with the awards aspect and the documentation of FIRST, starting with the engineering notebook and moving on to chairman's for FRC. And so I kind of followed that career path. At the moment, I'm working for a nonprofit on the east side of downtown San Antonio, working with biotechnology startups, trying to turn them into actual businesses. I run all of their marketing, and then I'm also a programs intern.
Awesome. And I was kind of first brought into robotics by the computer science and electrical portion of what we did and learned, first back then it was Robot C and FTC, and then moved over to Java, and then started writing code in C++ and C# for FRC. And when I went to college, I decided that, I like computer science, I like programming, but it's not what I want to do professionally. So I ended up going down the route of cybersecurity. So I started learning about cybersecurity and secured an internship at a company called CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a what's called an incident response firm, or at least that's a part of the firm that I work with. Incident response is if a major company is hacked by a threat actor, usually from a foreign country, and either data is stolen or held for ransom. On occasion, it can be worse than that. It really just depends. CrowdStrike moves in and does investigation or remediates, kicks malware off of systems, kicks the malicious actor out of the company's computer, gets the company back on track, and provides them with a report of the full investigation. So it's investigative work using something called digital forensics, which is recovering stuff. You know how they say that if something's on your computer, it's never really deleted. The people that I work for are the kind of people that can really go in and find that stuff. It's super cool, in my opinion. And I've been with them for 2 years now. I'm finishing up my second internship with them. So I guess I'll start on what FRC and FTC provided me skills-wise with that helped me then with further my career and further my internships and stuff, right? Because both Rylee and I are in a unique position where we were both recent students in FIRST, but we're both also now entering the professional world as college students. For me, it was kind of twofold. One side of it was the technical aspect. So while I'm not doing programming in my day-to-day life, I am getting a minor in computer science at school, and I'm also using a lot of programming knowledge and a lot of it I learned in robotics at my job for automation and understanding how computers work and stuff like that. I was taught by two really, really expert programmers. The one I want to highlight, his name's Ryan Cooper. He's like the smartest programmer I've ever met, and I think that'll always continue to be the case. And I was taught by him. He was my mentor on the robotics team back in high school. He's also an alumni of our team. And the skills that he gave me translated directly into setting me ahead in my college courses for programming and cyber. So that was really, really cool. On kind of the less like super technical skills, and I think this is the more valuable part, at least of what I learned, it's how to think through a problem, right? In the job that I do, and we're faced with new computer programs that have been hacked and new like styles and what's called tactics, techniques, and procedures that are used by threat actors to hack into systems. And they're always new and novel, and we don't know about them, right? So it's not just, okay, here's a problem that you have to fix. It's here's a problem nobody's on board. Figure out a solution, right? And so a lot of that is similar to robotics, right? Robotics gives you, here's a game, figure out a solution, right? For example, like last year in FTC, you had to shoot those like disc things, right? The frisbees. When was the last time a frisbee got shot in FTC? Like never, right? Or at least not in recent years, not since I've been doing it. And so the idea to be able to get a new challenge that nobody's ever seen before and take it and adapt to it and apply what you've done previously to this new issue was really, really awesome for me. In addition to communication skills and soft skills and teamwork and other stuff like that. So I'll let Rylee talk now.
As for me, I'm not in a STEM field, so a lot of what people think of as product skills is a little less applicable. But for me, what really impacted my career and my education is most of the soft skills I acquired during robotics. So I've been running all of the social media, social media, like documentation, essay writing, awards, safety, all of the soft skills of FRC and FTC since 2016, 2017 time range for BronkBots. So I learned a lot about how to communicate, how to work as a team, how to manage. I did a lot of time and project management for the team. And then I also have got a lot of experience with graphic design and making flyers and posters and presentations, writing in both technical writing and flowery writing that's, meant to be pretty, because I did all of that stuff for the team. And it also, robotics gave me a really unique perspective. Like I said, the company I'm working for works with biotech startups. So having previously worked with engineers and a lot of other students, I also have a unique technical background. I understand a lot more of the technical aspects of what our clients are doing and what our clients are trying to do than a lot of other marketing people would necessarily have because of my background.
And there's actually one thing that Rylee said there that I want to really reiterate and hit on. If you want to go into engineering or anything engineering related, so like Rylee's in business and marketing, right? But she's marketing and helping develop startups that are engineering technology, right? So if you want to go into anything related to technology, what you're going to realize is that by and large, a lot of people that work in technological fields are incredibly intelligent, but struggle to communicate complex topics to non-technical people, right? It's a thing you see all the time in engineering, computer science, right? I see it all the time in in my job, right? We're talking with CEOs and CIOs of companies, right? And you could tell them all day up and down how the threat actor got in, what piece of malware and code that they ran, how they ran it, when they ran it, who they hacked, right? But at the end of the day, they don't care. They care about how is my business impacted? How am I'm going to deal with this and turn this around and not make this a net business loss, right? And so you have to be able to take the technical aspect and give it to them as a business answer because that's what they want to hear. On Rylee's side, you have to do a lot too, right?
It's very similar to like pit judging when a judge comes into your pit or you're going into the judging room and you encounter a judge that knows nothing about FTC and you have to explain everything from the very beginning. It's very, very similar to that. And it's a very, very impactful and useful skill to have because not everyone is going to know everything that you know.
Right. And learning to cater to your audience, whether they care about, it's like if you're running a startup, right? They care about your technology, or maybe they don't care about your technology as long as it works. Maybe what they care about is how does this make me money? How are we selling it? What's the marketing, right? They already trust your technology. They don't need to know about that. They need to know about the business, right? So it just depends on what you're doing, and the skill to be able to cater to your audience and communicate complex topics gracefully is really, really important. So James, just remind me how long we have, because I had a couple other things we wanted to talk about, but if we're out of time, that's fine too.
James, you're on mute.
Uh-oh.
I mean, you have to like 2, but there's a short break in between, so I think you can go a little bit after 2.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
plenty of time, so.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. In that case, I had some topics, thank you, that were given to me to kind of talk about, and I'm going to break them into 2 categories, and both Rylee and I'll kind of speak on each one. The 2 categories are kind of like robotics related, like running FTC teams, doing well in FTC, right? Because we are, despite like also having professional lives, we are still FTC and FRC coaches. And so we can, we coach 3 FTC teams and 1 FRC team under BronkBots. And then I also want to talk about like the professional career I've talked about. So we'll start with the robotics topics. And so the first one is when we were in high school, another one in college, I think we talk about that too. How do we balance robotics and school and work and life, right, at the same time? I don't know if you want to go first on that one, or
Yeah, so personally right now, we're working our 3 teams, but we also work with several other teams that are not BronkBots, kind of on the side, mostly virtual, but sometimes we go to their shop as well. And with both of us working part-time, I was in school this summer as well. So I was working full-time this summer, taking classes and still working with the robotics program. It can be really difficult to manage time. But the thing that I always found that works for me is I always get my stuff done at least 1 day early. That way, if I fall 1 day behind, I'm not late, right? I'm late on my terms, but I'm not late on other people's terms. That was always super important for me. It's how I've managed all of my schoolwork for the last year and all of the schoolwork this summer. If I have things done several days in advance and something runs long and I run out of time for homework, oh well, that homework's not due for a couple more days. I found that skill and that way of managing at least schoolwork super helpful. In high school, we were both very academic, took a lot of AP courses. We did the same thing. Of course, in high school, it's harder because, you know, teachers are assigning things day of or only a couple of days ahead. But my goal was always to get stuff done as soon as I possibly could after it was assigned. An FTC, so it worked out really well. And also you have to understand that while FTC and FRC, while robotics is important, it doesn't trump grades. It doesn't trump school. It doesn't trump your education. So your education always comes first. And if that means that you have to skip a practice or even skip an event, then that's what happens.
Yep, absolutely. And so the only thing that I'll add to that is what you always hear, right? And what I could say is like, manage your time wisely. Time management, don't procrastinate, right? Which is all very good advice. And I highly recommend you take that advice better than I do. But the other thing that I want to say is make sure you know when to say no to stuff. So this year, our team wanted to run summer workshops, right? And I said, that's fine. If you want to run summer, like a summer camp workshop thing, go for it. I'm more than happy to help, but I will not be taking lead on that. I'm not going to be the one setting it up. I'm not going to be coming up with the content. I will be there and help teach, but I'm not going to be doing the prep work for that because I'm doing the prep work for these 5 other things. If I take on the prep work for that, then something else is going to fall behind, right? So if that's something you want to do, then I need someone else to lead that. And if there's no one else to lead that, then it's not going to happen, right? At some point, there's going to come a time when there's too much stuff to do and not enough time to do it. And so if it's only you doing it, you have to say no to something, right? And saying no is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Regardless of if you feel like you're letting people down or whatever, you will let people down more if you kind of put half effort into everything you're doing. That's worse if you put out a bunch of low quality stuff as opposed to doing a couple things high quality.
And that's especially important when you're super busy and it's, you know, your responsibility to run several large things already. So for example, I'm the main technical and awards lead for BronkBots, which means that all of the CAD education, manufacturing, safety, awards, writing, all of that, all of the outreach management, all of the fundraising, that all falls on me. And as for Dylan, he also does a lot of the technical education with me with CAD,
Mhm.
but he's also basically our only programming mentor right now. So he's in charge of teaching all of our students programming, and he's not going to be in San Antonio for the fall. So we've both been super crazy busy trying to get prepped for him not being here.
Mhm.
And so it's really important to understand that sometimes you just have to draw a line and say, I'm already at capacity or I'm already over capacity, and someone else needs to run things.
Yeah. And if you want me to pencil this in for 2 months from now, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't do it now. So that's in my opinion, the best way to manage your time. Next thing is, what specific things did your team do to achieve a good score? I have a lot more to say on this on the FRC side than the FTC side, but I think a lot of the stuff is going to cater to both. First thing that I would recommend, if you want to really dig in deep on best practices, if you go to spectrum3847.org, right? And you navigate to their resources page. Spectrum 3847 is an FRC team. So this is going to be more for FRC resources than FTC, but there is some time management stuff in there. They have a plethora of resources on best practices for like running your season and time management. But generally, the things that I think we did to have a good score is this, right? An FTC. On the programming side, having a solid code base written before the season starts. Right? Doing all of your programming training before then, so that your programmers already know what they're doing. They understand encoders, they understand sensors, right? They understand autonomous, or whatever else they may need to know. If you want to be like really crazy good, they know Roadrunner and path planning, right? And like advanced Mecanum autonomous and stuff like that, right? To do all that crazy stuff. If you're going to end up doing CADing or 3D printing, then that is all trained before, right? Training over the summer is the best thing you can do. And I know that's hard because people go out of town, people are here, whatever, but it seriously does matter. And so for our team, when we do like, we do our leadership interviews for like captain and co-captain and stuff like that. And then on FRC, you have a bunch of different types of captains. We do that in the fall, like at the beginning of the fall. And it's based off of last season and it's based off of the summer, right? So the summer really is a key time to be involved because you're going to get a leg up. In FRC, I also recommend doing off-season competitions. I know that's not as much of a thing in FTC, but it helps train new people.
That's not true. Shameless plug. We host our own
That's true.
FTC off-season competition in May.
You guys were there.
If you want to train.
So then when the season starts, I recommend a couple of things. And I'm going to talk about the robot first. We can talk about awards after, if that's all right.
Sure.
I was just going to say on the robot, your key things are know your goals. So we do something called need, want, dream. Is that what you're going to say? We categorize what we want our goals to be, not how we want the robot designed, right? This is before you get into robot design. If someone pitches out robot design while you're doing need, want, dream, you tell them to wait, right? Because this is on like the first day or two of the season. And you identify, what does our robot need to be able to do? What do we want it to be able to do? And what's the dream, right? Identify your goals based on your resources.
Let me clarify what Dylan is saying, because if I didn't know what need, want, dream is, that would be a little confusing. We go up to our whiteboard.
Yeah,
we
sure.
separate it into, we have 3 columns and we have 2 rows. The first row is autonomous. What does the robot need to do to be minimally competitive in autonomous? We write that down. What do we want the robot to do? That's what a pretty good team would do. And then dream is, what would a world championship FTC robot do in autonomous? And we do that same thing for autonomous and then for teleop. And again, it's not robot design. It's not what would the intake look like? What would the shooter look like? It's how many balls do we need to score in order to be, a good robot? We need to spin the duck. We need to, whatever the game is that year, it's skill based and not design based. And it's a really good way to, one, we print it out and it stays on the board all season long. And it's a really good way for us to say, okay, where is this design falling? Does this design fall in our need category? Does it fall in our want category? Does it fall in our dream category? The other thing that we do is we typically design to the higher end of our want category, knowing that we have the ability to design to the dream category if we have time.
Yep.
We almost make it modular per se, so that if we wanted to take and switch something out, we could. The other thing that we always encourage our students to do, that not all of our FTC students do, but we 100% do on FRC, is CAD. CADing out your robot is so important, because any design changes that you want to make, it is so much better to be able to make that digitally and see how that's going to impact the rest of your robot instead of just doing it.
Yep.
The number of times where we've been working with students and they've been like, we're going to make this change, and then they just go and do it and it breaks the rest of the robot is crazy. Because they don't necessarily think about all of the different interactions from, intake to shooter and how the ball goes all the way through the robot and etc. The other thing that I want to talk about is awards are important. They're a lot more emphasized in FTC than they are in FRC, but they're super duper important, and making sure that all of your students are an expert in something, are involved in that process, involved in the writing and the presentation is all super key. As a judge, as someone who has judged before, if I'm walking into a team's pit and there is only one person talking to me, I'm disappointed, because I know that that person is the only person on that team who has been trained to do that, basically, if that makes sense. So I really encourage that awards and judging and that kind of thing is really a full team effort. It should be everyone involved, not just one or two people.
Yep. And the other thing I'll say on awards real quick before we move into our last topic is make sure for awards, if you're doing community outreach, if you're doing something like that, right? Not so much on the robot awards, but for community outreach awards, do something that you care about, right? Do something that you love. And so if you have an idea for something your team could do, if you and like 2 other people can run that project and just do it, awesome, right?
Should be something you're passionate about, because if no one else is passionate about it, it becomes too much for one person to manage.
But both Rylee and I have been judges, right, for awards, and we can tell you that the most impactful ones is when when I ask, like, oh, I see in your materials here in your engineering notebook, right, like that you did XYZ project, right? Tell me about that. And if you go like, oh, that was James's project, like he came up with that, he ran that, let me go get him. And you get James, and James comes over and James is like, this is so cool, I love doing this is what I care about, we helped a bunch of people, let me tell you everything and just information dump on you because I'm excited about this. That matters, right? Because it tells me that you care about this. Similarly with the robot, if it's like, oh, you want to learn about the intake, Rylee designed that, and Riley's like, oh my gosh, yeah, we went through 4 intakes, we had to do this, this, and this, right? And she can explain the process because she did it and she cares about it. Showing that enthusiasm is my #1 biggest thing as a judge.
It's always about how personable you are. Every judge has seen tens of teams, right? They've seen a lot of different people come through their room. If you're memorable, if the judges remember you because you're passionate about something, or you gave a really in-depth, really well done description, or whatever it is that they're memorizing, they're remembering you for, you're more likely to be up for a lot of different awards, because they can, when they think of this topic, you're the first thing that pops into their head. Yeah. So be memorable about what you're doing, make sure you're passionate about it.
And I think that segues greatly into the next thing I want to talk about. And I know I'm at time, so we won't go for too long on this. I basically just have 1 or 2 things I want to say on this, and that ties into interviews, right? So talking more on the professional side now, not as much robotics, those same skills of that judging that we were just talking about, I apply directly to interviews that I do, right? So when I'm interviewing for cyber stuff, I'm not just talking about, oh yeah, I learned this in class and I can do this and I have this skill and I can program in this language, right? It's like, I really enjoy this, and maybe I'll even go into like this one little super technical thing about it I really enjoy, because it shows that I took the time to learn that thing because I thought it was interesting. If you're interviewing for something and talking about something that you don't care about and isn't interesting, you're interviewing for the wrong thing, right? What are you gonna say?
It's also super important for college interviews or scholarship interviews. Make sure when I talk about robotics, I get super animated, my arms start to go everywhere, I'm smiling really wide, like I get really into it because I really, really love it. The number of people who have interviewed me, or people that I'm just talking to and pitching robotics to, the number of people that have come up to me and basically said, you can tell that you really love this and it's making an impact on other people. It's crazy. When you're interviewing for a scholarship, Dylan has a full ride scholarship.
Oh, thanks.
Robotics is huge for that because 1, it shows you have excellent time management skills because robotics is crazy. it shows that you have, you know, a background in doing something difficult where you're problem solving and you're working with people, and that, you know, you can be a team player. But it also really just shows that you've found something that you're super passionate about. And a lot of people, myself and Dylan included, have done robotics and have gone on to do something as a career, as a, you know, as a degree that tied back into our robotics skills and our, you know, experiences. So just don't, you know, don't spend your entire interview only talking about robotics. I'm guilty of doing that. I love it, but it is a really great program, and it's a great program that a lot of people know about. And I mean, most of the skills are super applicable to anything. So
I would also say, be conversational.
yeah.
Right? You're not talking to a computer, you're talking to a human being. It's okay to crack a joke. It's okay to take a pause and be like, if they ask you a question, and be like, you know what? That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of that. Let me think about that for a minute, you know? During the interview for my scholarship, I was talking about, because I did debate in high school, and it turns out one of the people there was a debate coach for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I really miss yelling at people like, no, I understand your point is wrong. And I kind of like hit the table, and like everybody kind of jumped, and then we laughed about it. I was like, you know, I miss being able to do that and stuff like that. Just relate to people and be conversational, right? I'm super animated. Rylee's pretty animated. You don't have to be animated. You can kind of be more reserved and chill, and being chill is fine. We all have different personalities, but talk to them like you talk to a real human being, right? That's important. Now, you still want to be professional. Watch your words, make sure that you're not like using a bunch of slang or like slouching, right? Or anything like that. But there's a difference between being conversational and being professional and being like too comfortable. And if you can hit that conversational tone in what you're doing, you're going to be so much better off for it, because they're going to be like, I like that kid. That because you want to bring that same energy to the table your first day there, whether it's at college or at work.
And all of this is also super applicable to judging. Dylan and I were the chairman's team for a while, and we won chairman's, 2 years between the two of us?
Yeah. That's like the Inspire Award for,
like,
for FRC, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, it's you submit a 10,000 character essay, and then you have a 7-minute interview in a room, and you're judged based off of that. And that conversational nature that you can get into with judges is actually so incredibly similar to an interview, that if you can get comfortable in judging rooms, when you walk into an interview room, it's not going to be nearly as scary as everyone talks about.
Yep.
So I would say that chairman's really kind of prepared me for scholarship and college interviews, job interviews, because I was already comfortable, because of how many times I had done judging between FTC and FRC. I was already comfortable walking into a room where people were judging me because I've done it.
Yep. The last thing I'll say, and this does not apply to an interview specifically, but it will apply to everything you do, robotics, college, and your professional life, right? Is networking. Networking is the bread and butter of business and work and working with other people. And I, contrary to popular belief, am not a social person. I would much rather sit in my room and work on code all day, right? If I'm at a big event, I don't like going up and introducing myself to people, but I do it. I make myself do it, right? And I make myself put on a smile, and I go talk to people, because the connections you make, as when you start making more and more connections, you're going to realize really quickly how small the world is and how many people know each other and talk. And all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, Dylan Watson, I know Dylan Watson. I've met him, right? He did such and such with me on such and such a project at school. So, so I've seen that happen firsthand, right? And specifically in college, when you get to college, there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of industry connections, right? So I work in a research lab for the department chair for cyber. Turns out she knows a lot of the people that work at major cyber companies around Texas, right? And so getting to know her, having her lab on my resume, then helps when I get to meet other people, and then they talk to her. Right. And so networking and knowing as many people as possible is absolutely key.
Yeah, I want to add that the San Antonio, engineering and technology ecosystem is actually extremely close knit. the number of people that I've met through robotics, going to, a robotics event or a robotics networking event, or just simply because we're trying to work with them on something, and then I've turned around and met them at a work event, is crazy. For example, I was working, we went to a robot SATX networking event at Techport.
Yeah.
And I met a woman. Dylan and Mr. Gabe had worked with her before, but I hadn't met her yet. She's just someone we had worked with the team. And then I went to a work event like 2 weeks later, and she was there. And she asked me for a favor. And so now we'll be working more closely with them. But it's really important to make those connections. Make sure that, you're professional and that you're putting your best foot forward at events, because you never know who's there. Dylan and I were student ambassadors, and we met several generals and, mayors and VIPs when we were walking people around and explaining to them what FIRST was. And so those connections can last for a really long time. They can be super impactful, but you just want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and that you're making those connections, because they can really be helpful in the future.
Yep.
Oh, also, for those of you, when you graduate high school, look for a FIRST alumni group. There's one at most universities. I really encourage you to do that, because it'll be great. I know a lot of them send out volunteer opportunities or job opportunities or internships that they were a part of. It's just a really great network to be involved in with like-minded students who have done similar things to you.
Absolutely. With that, I don't have anything left. If you don't, the only other thing I was going to say is, if anybody watching the podcast, I don't know who this is being broadcast to, but if anybody watching this has any questions about whether it be robotics, whether you need help with actual robot stuff or awards, or you don't have a team, or you need to get started or whatever, if anybody has any questions about college generally, especially if you're going to a UT system school like UTSA, because I've been there for, I'm going into my 4th year now, or anything else that you might need that is associated with robotics or college or cybersecurity or computer science or anything like that, you can feel free to email Rylee or I believe we sent our emails in, but in case you don't have that, that's just my first.lame at bronkbots.org. So it's DYLAN.WATSON at bronkbots.org. And Rylee's is the same way, Rylee.Lippenholtz.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try to spell that. If you want to contact us, if you go to bronkbots.org and you click on the contact us and you submit a form through that, I'm the only one who looks at that. Dylan doesn't even pretend to look at that.
That's true.
So if you're looking for me, I'm always answering those emails. I'm going to put in one more shameless plug. I run the website right now. If you go to our website, you click on FIRST, or I think it's resources. We have an entire FTC and FRC resources page. I've spent a lot of time curating it. It's currently expanding with another program that I'm running. So I really encourage you guys to look at that if you're looking for some additional resources. And if you can't find what you'd like, send us a message and I'll be happy to get back with you guys.
And the very last thing I'll say is, if anybody is looking for outreach and networking opportunities, we have them. Rylee runs an organization called Stargaze, which is trying to increase the competitive level and overall knowledge of FTC and FRC teams in Texas. So if you're from Texas, we can give you a hand with that. If you want to get your team involved and do some outreach that you can claim on awards, but you can also help other teams in your area or receive help, then let us know. Feel free to hit us up on that. And if you want to get involved with anything else, you want to get involved with networking, that student ambassador thing that Rylee was talking about, Rylee is co-leading with the FIRST Senior Mentor in San Antonio. And no matter what area you're in, we could try to kick it up where you are. So if networking or awards or outreach or anything like that is something that interests you and you don't know where to start, reach out to us. I promise you, we have stuff that we can get you doing that will help your community no matter where you are.
And if you're seeing this before August 12th, we are running an FTC catathon, not this weekend, but next weekend, if anyone is interested in getting involved. It's, we made a custom game, and it'll be a really cool, 48-hour catathon project if it's something you're getting interested in.
Yes, so if you want to do that, feel free to go to the website and send Rylee a contact form, or email me.
Or go on Chief Delphi. If anyone knows what Chief Delphi is, there's a whole thread on there.
Yep.
You should be able to find it pretty easily.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
You
Yeah,
guys
thank
have
Dylan, I want to say something. Is it thing? Can you hear me? Hello?
I'm sorry. I can hear you, although it's a little muffled.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, perfect.
Yes. Yeah. We are extremely happy to have you, both of you. And I think your speech kind of a role model. I still remember 3 years ago, we went to Bronco and both of you taught us like SolidWorks. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and I think we starting, that's our first year FTC. And I'm really feel inspired by both of you still on the field. Even you're in college. And just thank you so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I know I really love running things like that, where I get to work with these students back when they're first getting involved, and then now you guys you're not little kids anymore. And it's really crazy to see. It's been crazy to see like 3 or 4 generations of BronkBots students grow up and graduate. And now they're in college and they're in the workforce. And now that we're mentors and really active volunteers and alumni, it's really great to see students just like us going through this program. We really love it. So.
We keep in touch. And
of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll definitely reach out to you guys. And we also have all of your contact information at the end of the slideshow. So
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having us. We'll hop off.
Good day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so right now we'll have a 20-minute break and we'll be returning at 2:30 to finish the second half of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for attending.
Or do this. Do you guys have it as a, do you want me to keep talking? Or you just want to ask questions, or how have you guys been doing it so far?
I'll introduce you first, and then you can talk about your experience with First and how it relates to what you're doing at your job right now. And then we'll ask a few questions at the end.
Okay, awesome.
So right now we're going to have Patrick talk about his experience and challenges in FTC and FRC and how it relates to what he does right now in his work. He is an alumni of BronkBots and is currently a robot programmer at Toyota. So please welcome Patrick.
Hey guys, so yes, and if you guys have any questions, please just to like stop me. Sometimes I do talk too much and too fast. So if there's any questions or if you guys need to stop me, just let me know. Again, I'm really sorry. I am at work right now. Just took a quick break because I would really love to talk about my experiences. And just like you said, I was a alumni from FTC and FRC from BronkBots. I started back in 2009 in FTC 4008, and then the year afterward we decided to do FRC, which is 2010. And I was one of the originals back in the day, and just fast forward to what I do now, I am still a robot programmer, just with bigger industrial robots for Toyota. And I believe that I'm really lucky where I'm at right now. I currently travel. I'm not in Texas. We travel all over the place, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and recently we just went to Indonesia. So a lot of things and a lot of exposures with different teams in different areas, which is very similar to FTC and FRC. But specifically going to like the challenges that we had back in FTC and FRC, I would probably say that, you know, everybody has different ways to solve a problem. And what I'm trying to say there is, you know, just like in FTC and FRC, we're always faced with problems and everybody has different solutions. And I think one of the biggest challenge is, you know, having your own solution and working with other people and being okay with that. You know, because everybody has, you know, different ways of solving things. And I see that at Toyota. I see that wherever we go, with different places in Indonesia, everybody has different team, and you have to figure out a way to be respectful and be able to listen. And, you know, if they have critical or, you know, constructive criticism, to be okay with that. And, you know, I'm talking about FTC and FRC experience, you know, that, you know, I'm not sure if this is specifically for FRC, but, you know, it gets really heated, especially, you know, the beginning of the season when everybody has ideas. And even though maybe all of it would work, we have as a team have to respect and make sure that we're going forward. versus everybody just trying to do their own thing, and it happens a lot, right? Um, and I know one of the other things that you guys want to talk about is, I'll just go through the list. I know there's a lot of questions. Um, I guess the first thing that you guys mentioned is like career insight. And so again, I'm a robot programmer. It's very different from like Java. And when we started, we still had Robot C back in the day with FTC that switched to basically Android Studio with Java programming. Um, Things that I do now, a lot of it is mostly AS language, which is like Kawasaki, but I'm not even going to go through much of that. But a lot of the things that I learned, I can still apply to what I do now. For example, you have to slow down, make sure that you don't go too fast. Whenever, let's say, you make many changes in the program, next thing let's say you have a backup from like a day ago, and you made major changes in your program throughout the day and just forget to make backups. Sometimes you just have to slow down and make sure, hey, this is what I know that's good. And then 2 or 3 hours of trying to figure out what a problem is, you have to make sure that you have a pretty good stepping point. Like, take it slow and take it easy, and make sure that you don't rush into things and make too many changes at once. Uh, when I was still a student, when I was doing all that programming, it's very exciting to get into there and kind of just get very narrow focus, or what do you call it, like tunnel vision is what I'm saying. It's just something that just comes to my mind. I'm winging a lot of this right now. I know another question is, how has FRC and FTC influenced your college and major section? I think I realized when I did FRC and FTC that I really like problem solving. Just the challenges. I think one thing FTC and FRC made me realize is, every year you have different changes, you have different games, you have different challenges. It's not the same thing over and over again. And a lot of the things that I do, it's not the same. We would go to different plans and different projects, and we always have different challenges. So that's what made me realize that, look, if I'm gonna have a job after college, it's gonna be something that's going to keep challenging me. It's gonna be something that I enjoy. It's not always the same thing over and over again. And I'm really lucky to have this job. And again, because it's just like FRC and FTC, it's not the same thing every time. You always have something different. You're always going to have new people that you're going to meet throughout the years. You're going to begin from a freshman to a senior. The people that you met 4 years ago is going to be in college, and the people 4 years afterwards is going to be new people that you need to teach. You're always constantly meeting new people from different teams. You're going to have mentors. You're going to have different games. It's that constant, in a way, constant stress of like being a team player and being able to adapt to new situations. And that's something that made me realize, look, I want to do something like that after college, or even in college, for example. How did I balance? Sorry, does anyone have any questions, or are we good?
I think you're good.
Okay. So how did I balance school and FTC at the same time? And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't. I did really bad. But if there's anything that maybe I would have told myself when I was a student, is being able to depend on other people. Let's say you're the guy that knows how to program. You're the guy that knows how to do all the late or all the fabrication, or you're like the a bumper guy or something, for example. You want to make sure that you can actually share those skills to other people, so you're not the only person that knows how to do it. Because sometimes you will get overworked. There's times when, oh yeah, I can do this by myself. But there's going to be times when you do have deadlines, not just on robotics. You have deadlines with school because you're still trying to keep up your grades, make sure that you're good. I think one of the biggest challenge when you're a student is just having being okay with sharing what you know, or being, comfortable with like, no, I can't do this. I need help, or I need other people. And one way to do that is just, share what you know. If you have a specific skill that you're really good at, especially if you're like a senior, especially if you're like, you have that passion about something specific in robotics, even scouting, for example. If there's something that you think you're good at, and don't be afraid or don't hesitate to tell that to other people, because there's going to be time. I'm not saying that you're replaceable, but you have to realize that it's not a one man team, right? You know, you're gonna burn yourself out if you don't teach other people what you know. You know, and this is, I wish I learned that, because I feel like I burned myself out. Just like, again, I couldn't balance myself because I said, oh yeah, I can do this, I can knock this out. And next thing you know, we're like behind for 3 days because I never told anybody else what I'm doing or how I can, you know, teach other people. So that's probably one of my biggest, drawback when I was a student. And I burned myself out so much just because I know so many things, but I never really give other people a chance to like learn what I know. If you guys are following. And that's even here at work, that's something that, you know, people would tell us is, look, work life balance, right? I travel so much and I always volunteer because I enjoy what I do, but at the same time you have to make sure that, you know, if if they let me go, like Toyota is going to keep building cars, Toyota is going to keep finding experienced people. You're not the only person that knows what to do your job, and that should be the same with FTC and FRC. You know, after 4 years you're not going to be there's going to be another person that's going to be there. So you have to have that mindset that you're not always going to be there, and you have to like pass down the information that you have. And that's one way to realize to not burn yourself out. Because I have days when I'm failing classes, and it's because I'm so focused in robotics. And if I don't pass those classes, then what am I doing? You know, because there's a point when you're so tunnel vision that you're just all you cared about is trying to get this robot running, right? You have a competition in like 3 days and everything's falling apart. And next thing you know, you have 3 students or you have 3 other friends that's there. They're not really stressed out. That should never ever be the case, you know. I'm sorry, I'm being very emotional. So please let me know if I'm going too much in this. Um, let's see. What specific things that your team did achieve to have a good score? Um, I would probably relate this to 2016. You have to know your limits. Um, so we started this thing even here at work at Toyota. We use something called the Denwacho, which is basically a long story short, is a Gantt chart. Basically, we try to plan out ahead our project and see how long it's going to take for us to do things and if it's actually achievable. So in robotics, you know, every team's going to be different. There's going to be really experienced team with, you know, like thousands of dollars of budget, and you're going to have teams that barely have any support, any mentor support or any budget at all, or doesn't even have an actual proper building to build a robot on. And what it boils down to is whenever we do the foundation of what we're going to do throughout the season, you have to know what your team is capable of. It's nice to, you know, plan out and say that, oh yeah, we can do all of these things, that, you know, we have this unachievable goal that we're going to be like the world champion. But you have to know your strength. And what I'm trying to say there is you have to make sure that you know what your team can do. Not what you can do, what your team can do. Okay. Like you can maybe CAD for like 30, 40 hours, but is that realistic if you're just doing all the work? Or for example, you know, going back to the 2016, this is the FRC time. We focus on not doing everything. So whenever you do your matrix of like what scores the best or what strategy you're gonna do, you have to, like, you know, sometimes you have to make sacrifice. Oh, I'm gonna focus on the end game, or I'm just gonna focus on scoring this, you know, depending on what kind of design that you guys are gonna do. So being realistic with your goals, I think that's something that really will help you out, is realizing what your team is actually capable of. Does that make sense? I don't know if I know I'm talking too much. I just need to make sure that everybody also understands what I'm saying, because I do babble a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think that's probably the most important thing, is knowing your limits. So not just yourself, but your whole team, because, you know, you guys are if you're trying to achieve something that you guys already know that's almost impossible, you guys are just gonna burn your team out. You guys are spending like 12 hours every day, but next thing you know, like, are you sure that this is actually even possible, or is this even doable? And this is really critical, especially in the beginning of the season when you're trying to figure things out. What is a good skills to prepare for the summer? I would say probably just a lot of, you know, learning how to be co-dependable with each other, which is basically like, if there's a skill that you would like to learn, I would probably do that now. And I would do like a lot of mock-up design, right? Like you're gonna maybe try to figure out what the new game is gonna be instead of just trying to like, I would probably like practice, okay, like, make your own games, make it fun, make it something that, like try to like do the game from last year. I would try to like design a robot based on the game last year. And I know there's a lot of examples for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just practice, learn something that you still don't know. Get out of your comfort zone. Like if you're a programmer guy, maybe try to learn how to lathe, maybe try to learn how to do wiring, or like scouting even. Um, some lessons you learn throughout your experience with first. I think this will boil down to, just learning that, everybody has different ways to solve a problem and being okay if your solution is not one of those, right? Your solution might be the best, but there's a reason why this is a team and not just like one person. Just being okay with that. That takes a lot of guts. That takes a lot of just being able to be okay with like, okay, you have to listen to other people, because throughout your life, even after robotics, after you don't even have to do robotics anymore, but you're always gonna have problems, and you're not always gonna be the one person that's gonna solve it all, and you just have to learn how to be okay with that. I think if there's anything that I learned the biggest with FRC and FTC is just being able to like work with people and being okay with, being wrong. Even though in my heart, I feel like, this is the best way to go. Um, and this one was a little bit, what did you do to prepare for the interview? Is that just like something like for me, or what is that for? That's
yeah, just like your job interviews. What are some specific things like really help
for
you
sure.
stand out from the rest?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they typically would ask for job interviews is just being honest about what you know and what you don't know. Because a lot of people is good with making things up, right? Everybody can say, "Oh, I have 5 experience at First Robotics." For example, my brother will probably bring this up later. They said, "Oh, we had this. I was part of this FTC team," and my brother asked during the interview, "Oh, well, what's your FTC team number?" And they couldn't even remember the FTC team number they're on. That says a lot. So and if that was me, I'll be like, yeah, that's a little bit rough if you don't even remember the team number that you're on. So just being honest, just being comfortable with what you know and what you don't know. And just, if people ask, it's always going to be like, they're going to be like, oh, so why do you want this job? Or, sometimes you have to be completely honest. Maybe if it's, you're just looking for experience, you're trying to gain experience. It's if you guys are going to college, or if you guys are trying to look for jobs after college, I think just be honest. And I think it's very easy to make things up, or excuse my French, but like BS your way to like trying to figure out, or trying to tell people, because you don't know. Like my brother, for example, maybe if my brother didn't have an FTC team, or he wasn't an FTC alumni or FRZ alumni, maybe he won't care. But be careful, because you don't know who you're gonna talk to. Like if you just like say, oh, I have this experience, or I was a captain of the FTC team, and you don't even know the number of your team, that's a little embarrassing. You gotta know your limits. But yeah, that's probably my biggest take on that, is just be honest, just be yourself. So, but yeah, that's I can't believe I ran through like almost 20 minutes over there. But any questions before
I have a
I
question
that?
for you. So
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
about your job at Toyota. What are some past projects that you have worked on?
Here at Toyota?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, we're part of all the new model changes. I'm not supposed to really talk about it, but I'm not sure if you guys know. This is already out, so don't worry about this one. So like, I'm not sure if you guys know, like the Toyota Tundras in Texas, and now the Toyota Sequoias. So I was part of that team that actually taught those robots that made that possible. So that's my first ever project in Texas. It took us about 2.5 years to get that done. And now we got projects in Mexico. So that's where we're going next. Right now, we're just volunteering here in Indiana for a new project that we're not supposed to talk about yet. But that's our biggest one. But see, like, just like if you think about like cell phones, for example, or like cars, there's always new models. So it's that constant changes, right? Like they always change what the phones look. They always change what the car looks because they have to stay competitive, right? So that's what I like. It's always something new, and we always meet new people. So like on this project, well, this weekend, we have people that's from Canada, we have people from Kentucky and Texas, and people from Japan too. We have Japanese advisors that's helping us out right now. So, but yeah, any other questions?
And has your experience with First given you a head start in Toyota or your job?
It really did. I think just realizing that when I first started at Toyota, I really was really overwhelmed. But like just knowing solenoids, just knowing how like a program structure work, like input, logic, and output, small little things like that helps. And just being able to like go through a whole FTC, FRC team and just trying to like learn how to work with people, that's very priceless, because I think First Robotics does such a great job of making people work together by trying to solve a problem and trying to argue and being okay and being, going through that burden of trying to make something work when everybody has different ways of thinking. That's the biggest challenge. And I think that's something that will take you anywhere. And in my job, with robot programming, with all the problem solving that we're doing here, it's always a problem to, communicate properly and everybody is on the same page. That's always a constant problem that we have. So.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any more questions?
I have a question. So, when was your last year for the Bronkbots?
The Bronkbots, it was 2018. And I think Dylan Watson already went here. I taught him programming back in the day, just to kind of give you guys an idea. And the last year that I was in Bronkbots was 2018. At the time, I think Dylan Watson just graduated, and I think I'm trying to still remember, but yeah, that's 2018 was the last year. So.
Okay, and you started 2009, you said, or did I get
2009? Yes, sir.
Oh my God, it's almost like a whole decade you've been in.
I know. Thank you for reminding me how old I am. I appreciate it.
No, I didn't mean to do that, but actually, a lot of the team members in TechnoWizards are actually in Brandeis. So I was just wondering, like, how was like your first year in FTC? Like, because I'm pretty sure 2009 was almost the first year for Brandeis itself. So
of course, I think they started in 2008. I guess to kind of give, I do need to go. But this is the last answer, unfortunately. But the way I got into FTC, I was really overwhelmed. But I was going through, I was trying to go to this website I'm not supposed to. It's just like a bunch of games. I think I was on this class where I was just trying to like play games, because I think it's like a Microsoft class. But my teacher saw me, is like, "Oh, Patrick, how were you able to bypass the security to go to like the gaming website?" And she was really impressed. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be there, but she's like, "Oh, you should join this robotics club." And I'm like, I don't think I'm smart enough for that. But I went ahead and tried it, and basically, they welcomed me, and everybody was brand new, which was nice. And I just started from there. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. But it was a bit overwhelming at first. But again, I think one thing that we don't do enough, and at least from my perspective, is we overwork ourselves just because we don't share our experience enough with other people. Regardless if I'm a mentor or a student, we get overburdened because we get tunnel vision. This is my thing. I'm gonna do it, and everybody else kind of just like eat snacks on the side. And I think we got lucky because the team was very new, so nobody really knows what they're doing, so it's easier. But the older the team get, the more it's kind of just like this like pattern of like, oh, you got the people that's willing to take care of each other, or like willing to like and take initiative, and you have people that's kind of just on the side and kind of just going with the flow. It's easier when you have a new team, when everybody's like trying to figure out what's happening, but when you have an older team, it's kind of like this, it's harder to like get everybody not be overwhelmed, if that makes sense. But yeah, unfortunately, I do gotta go back to work.
Yeah, I'll let you go. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
though.
you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys, thank you for the experience again. And I'll keep. So you guys are TechnoWizards. Is it an FTC team or FRZ team only?
Hopefully an
FTC.
FTC.
FTC team. Okay. Well, I hope you guys have a good day. All right.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So next we'll have his brother Daniel. He's also an alumni of BronkBots, and he's currently an equipment engineer at Tower Semiconductor. And he's going to talk about his experience in FIRST, how it has impacted his career choices, and some of the skills he's developed on his journey. So please welcome Daniel.
Thanks, James. I actually made a little PowerPoint. Is it possible to share my screen?
Oh yeah.
See if I can.
Let me give you co-host.
Oh wait, I think
Oh yeah.
do you guys see it?
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, like James said, my name is Daniel Angelis. My brother, he graduated 1 year before me, and I was in robotics for my whole high school career, or not career, high school years. So this is just gonna be an overview of the presentation that I'm gonna do. It's gonna be more of a formal presentation. I put this like an hour ago, so I'm sorry if it looks bland. But I also just got the list of questions that I had from seeing, and I'm gonna talk about those. I'll talk about my background and how I was involved in FIRST, and after that, I'll answer those questions. So just a little bit about background about myself. Like I said, I'm a FIRST robotics alumni. I currently work as an equipment engineer at Tower Semiconductor. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from UTSA, and I also have an associate's of applied science in advanced manufacturing technology from St. Philip's. So just some information about an equipment engineer, what I do. Also, as an equipment engineer, I'm in charge of maintaining semiconductor manufacturing equipment. I'm sure you guys are already familiar with Tower Semiconductor, right? Because they're a bigger sponsor, I heard. I only started there when I graduated, which is 2021 of December. So I'm only been there for 8 months, 10 months. So right now I work at the fusion and epitaxy process. They're basically just big furnaces or ovens that grows layers of different materials onto bare silicon substrates. So these pictures that I put here, these are just examples of the types of the work that I do as an equipment engineer. So on the left, I created a jig. I 3D printed it, so it makes it easier for technicians to extract some of the parts that get stuck because of the sticky byproducts. I made it orange just because it looks cool, but it also stands out, right? On the top middle, that's an example of a very bad PID tuning. I don't know if you guys are already aware of PID control, but you see the set point is the yellow line and the orange is the pressure control, and it's nowhere near the set point. It's just one of those things that you'll kind of learn as a mechanical engineer if you guys do choose mechanical engineering, which is going to be in control systems. And then on the right is a premature corrosion, and it's one of the things where you need to know what would cause it by examining different gases and chemicals that go through the process. Not everything's going to be ideal. Not everything's going to be, these are designed by actual engineers, and then when they gave it to us, it failed, and we're like, why did it fail? And those are just that's just an example. And then on the bottom is just another thing that I made using a 3D printer. They needed a vacuum attachment, that the one that broke in half, so someone else made that one, and I think I made that one. I just didn't make it as good as the new one. The new one, I put stainless steel rods in the middle to reinforce it. So that's a good idea if you guys have any 3D printed parts that you guys make.
We do actually, yeah, in FTC.
Awesome. Yeah. When I was in FTC, 3D printing just kind of started. Well, the desktop version ones. So here's an example of an obsolete part that the original manufacturer was selling for like $500. And we were like, I'll reverse engineer it and I'll redesign it. And then so we did. We used PVDF material, which is pretty expensive too, but it's about, I forgot how much it was per gram, but it's a lot more. If you guys are familiar with PLA and ABS, it's a lot more expensive. It's more chemical resistant. So as an equipment engineer, I also worked as a lead for the company's technician internship program. It's the same program that my brother and I was in when I was at Toyota. So I did work at Toyota. I forgot to mention that. But here are just some of the pictures that the students were working on. So if anyone is interested in doing the internship, let me know. This is going to be an associate's degree, which is what I did, but I'll explain that in a little bit. As far as more about myself, hobbies, I consider myself as a maker. I love doing fabrication, 3D printing, and anything design. I couldn't fit many pictures, so these are just some of the hobbies. On the top left is an example of me using photogrammetry 3D scanning. So if you guys haven't heard about this 3D scanning process, it's very, very helpful, especially when you're dealing with a real world stuff and you want to modify it to add something that's designed in CAD. Photogrammetry just uses pictures, so it doesn't use any specialized equipment. I literally just use my phone. I put a scale or a ruler as a reference. I know some of you guys are probably gamers, so I also have a picture of my gaming setup on the top right. I do love gaming, and I've been building PCs ever since robotics actually started. And a lot of the people when I was in robotics were also building PCs, and I'm sure you guys probably have some in your group.
Yeah, I can tell even behind you, I can see this little setup.
Yeah, so this one's
there.
actually I got her into gaming, but that racing sim on the right, I actually designed that in SolidWorks. Do you guys use SolidWorks for CAD?
We try to, but we actually use Fusion 360. There's one guy on our team that he knows CAD really well, but right now he's in New York.
Fusion 360 is very similar to SolidWorks. I just never learned it because I think I got introduced to SolidWorks through the sponsorship, but I heard Fusion 360 is very, very similar. I also like to cook as well. I know it looks weird, but that's an octopus on the left. And my 3D printer is on the middle, bottom right there. They're pretty cheap, so if you don't have one, you should get one. All right, so finally, fresh robotics. When I was in high school, that's pretty much all I did. I joined Bronkbots when I was in freshman. 2011, my brother said he joined in 2009, but I think it was 2010 because he's only a year before me. So I joined 2011, graduated 2014. I had different roles. I did graphics design, scout, CAD design. I know you guys probably do the same thing. You guys moved from different roles to another, wiring. I also did team captain, but I was pretty much a bad team captain because I kind of keep things to myself. Like if I had, I don't know, I'll talk about it later, but it's weird. I know some of you guys are probably made to be team captains, but some are probably just made to, lead like, CAD design or wiring. So some of the pictures when I had long hair, when I was in robotics. So if you guys have any pictures from robotics, keep that so you guys can look back to yourself in 5-10 years. So those are our robot on the left side. That was my last year, I think. And you guys use Tetrix still, or you guys use different parts now? I don't know what's in store now. Vex parts or Rev Robotics, I think.
Yeah, Rev.
Right. Yeah, they also came from robotics. Now they're a big company. All right, so just to answer some of the questions that you guys have. So as far as robot design, what I learned from my team, that I didn't really do was we spent a lot of time in brainstorming versus actually doing it and creating prototypes. We would brainstorm for like a month and we would never get to like we would never get anything done because we're still brainstorming, trying to fight like what's the best design. I know you guys probably already do this, but take advantage of CAD. So what I did when I was in robotics was I used CAD as much as I could. And then I would update the design every time we made changes. And it just made the prototyping easier. And I don't know how you guys use your engineering notebook, but ours, we would make it before the judging criteria. So we didn't actually use the engineering notebook as a tool like you're supposed to. And that's just something I learned now when I'm an actual mechanical engineer, that the documentation process is very important when you have different teams when you have different engineers in your team that needs to be able to communicate in different like shifts. And if you're not there, you need to be able to communicate by just using that engineering notebook. And it's also a good thing to look back, because now I actually look back, I was in computer science. Some of my projects were making games. So I was like, I saw my code and I'm like, I don't remember being able to do this, like how did I come up with this code, this algorithm? And being able to like document that will help that. And it's one of those things where you have to use it as a tool instead of just doing it because it's required. And I know it probably takes a while, or it takes a lot of time from you guys. Take advantage of the 3D printing. Like I know James already said that you guys do, or what's your name? I just see TechnoWizards number 16.
Oh, I'm Justin.
Justin, okay. I think Justin, you mentioned the 3D printing part. So take advantage of it. I mean, I don't know what rules you guys have now, but before then, it was 3D printing just kind of started, so we didn't have the freedom of it. Here's just an example of a feasibility matrix. I know you guys have probably seen one. So you guys have different proposals for designs. You just gotta, I think this is something that we didn't do. So this is just an idea that you guys can probably do when you guys design stuff like a drivetrain. You design a certain subassembly. For each subassembly, you can do a feasibility matrix. You can say like, if you want to use a gripper, you want to use like an arm, and you can put different numbers and categories and weight, and then have a total. So you guys don't keep fighting what design you guys want to use. And on the right picture is just an example of the drivetrain that I had to design. And those gears are aluminum. They're not very great. If you guys use aluminum gears, like use something else, they will shred and just skip gears. And I don't know who designed these things. Like, why would you have to put 200 million teeth on a small gear where you can, yeah, I don't know. I want to start my own company too, so we'll see. Here's just another example of the CAD design that I made, which made it so much easier to prototype. And actually, when you make an assembly like this, you can actually make it move and see if it'll fit. And this was actually made to like pick up little donut rings, plastic rings. All right, so back to questions. So one of the questions that I read was how to balance robotics in school. So always put academics before robotics. I know you guys have probably like heard about this a lot of times, but that's pretty much all I could say. To me, to be able to do that, you need discipline, right? To manage your time, and you always need to expect for the worst. But when I say worst, I mean expect not meeting deadlines for robotics, such as taking too much time brainstorming, taking too much time building. If you get better at managing your time, you'll be able to pretty much balance anything. You just have to remember that you will always be sacrificing something. Like for me, I had to sacrifice, being able to socialize with some of my friends. I didn't have much time with personal projects. And basically what you got to do is you got to make robotics your main hobby and nothing else. Like my brother, I didn't actually do a lot of that stuff. So it was hard. Procrastination is the hardest thing. Career path. So after robotics, I realized I could go through different career paths. Some are graphics design, computer science, video game design, engineering. I was really interested in programming, but I was also interested in doing hands-on stuff. So I was between computer science or engineering. But after being able to do a lot of the CAD design, I was like, I think engineering, mechanical or biomedical it's a good path for me. But that actually didn't happen because I had to join an internship instead. Like my brother, I saw him and I really liked how he turned out. After a year, he already graduated. I was like, man, he's learning a lot of this stuff. Not only that, but he's earning money. He's getting paid to, work and go to school at the same time. So I joined, and that same program, it's called Advanced Manufacturing Technology at Toyota, Texas, which is the plant that he used to work at. So it's a paid internship, and you get an applied science, associates in applied science degree. And then after that, after the 2 years, I worked full-time at Toyota and used that opportunity to save money basically for tuition to get my bachelor's degree at UTSA, to get my mechanical engineering degree. All right, so lessons learned. So I know you guys are probably on top of your scholarships already. Most of you guys are probably sophomores and juniors. I didn't do this because I didn't have enough confidence in myself that I was going to be able to, get the scholarships that I wanted. I learned that many of the grants and scholarships were not claimed because not a lot of people applied for them. So I would say create a plan and make sure like once a week you have, you update your plan. Like let's say this week I'm going to apply for 3. The next week I'm going to apply for 3, and then adjust as you go. And I didn't apply to as many, and I didn't really get a lot of the scholarship. I think I got 1, but it wasn't enough to like cover for tuition. So I had to actually, take my plan B, which is the AMT program. I don't really regret it one bit because I did like learn a lot. Hold on, let me see. I learned many things like about the industrial equipment and also lean manufacturing concepts, but they did offer me a full-time position after I graduated. So it was worth it, I think. I was able to save up for my bachelor's degree. What else? I talked about that. How did FRC or First Robotics influence my college and major section? As far as robotics and career selection, even before robotics, I was already passionate. I know you guys you guys like working, problem solving and, doing hands-on stuff. But it wasn't until robotics that made me realize that it was definitely my career choice, because that's when you actually apply things that, you see on YouTube, in the movies and things like that. And you guys probably hear this a lot, but being able to experience robotics it's different, because once you get into college, from my experience, a lot of them don't know, basic tools, based like bearings. They don't know how gears work, gear ratios, and things like that. So you guys do have that advantage. Good skills to prepare for the summer. All right, so my main thing was fabrication and CAD when I was in robotics. So I used the CAD experience that I had in robotics to, during the summer, I would practice doing a lot more CAD, and I actually had stuff 3D printed. I didn't have a 3D printer yet, so I would send out the files. I'd ask my mom for money and be like, hey, mom, I'd be like, I made A's like this semester. Can I spend some money to get some things 3D printed? But what I didn't learn is a lot of these were 3D printed using SLA, I think. And these are resin. So resin parts are not very, very good for, mechanical and vibrations, because they break. So they were very fragile. There's a quadcopter that I made even before the famous DJI drones are out there. You had to like build it from scratch. So you guys can see I built it from like aluminum extrusions, put a super old GoPro camera there. But anyways, plan a project that you're interested in. Don't be afraid to try like new things. So like watch YouTube tutorials. Like these days you have all the information in the world available for free. So that's kind of what I do. Anything that I want to do, don't be afraid to, if you like fail miserably, that's okay. Just move on, as far as like the cost of making stuff, you don't have to actually like 3D printers are so cheap nowadays, and a lot of you guys probably have friends and you have the robotics team to like help you with, you know, making stuff. So that's just, I guess that's my advice, to just plan a big project. Do you guys have any questions so far? I know I'm probably just talking.
Yeah, there's a question from the audience. How did robotics change your family dynamic as you and your brother were both in robotics in high school?
Family dynamic. My mom really supported us when we were in robotics, and I think that's the only thing was that we didn't really have a lot of family time. I actually don't remember how it was when I was in high school, because you get so busy with school, and I mean, you're also a teenager, right? Like it's like half the time you're like, I don't really want to spend time with my parents, you know. But as far as family dynamics, I got really close to my brother. All of my brother, we're like three. I have two siblings, my older and my younger brother. All of us actually went into robotics, and it got us all closer together. And it makes you realize that, you know, being brothers actually help. But at the same time, it's like you have different opinions, and you have different like things to solve problems with, like different design ideas, and you still have to, like, you're still brothers, so you kind of fight, you know. But at the end of the day, as far as family dynamics, it made us like a lot closer. Sorry, I don't know if that answered with your question. I can't really see the chat for some reason. Is there any other questions in the chat?
I think that was the only one.
Okay, but I'll continue with this one, and after this, I can take more questions. What time is it? Okay, I have like 9 minutes. All right. As far as interview, I've had small interviews. You know, I applied for smaller jobs like Discount Tire, HEB. They all ask the same question. They all ask, like, you know, why would you pick us? Why do you want to work here? They pick, you know, what's your strengths and weaknesses. So a lot of those questions, you know, Google it. You'll find it on Reddit. You find it on YouTube. You like the things that you have to prepare for are concept. Let's say you're a fresh grad. When I was in Tower Semiconductor, that's my first big interview. It was a 4-hour interview, and it's super exhausting, and I hated it. But what I was gonna say is, like, remember basic questions about the field that you're in. So when I'm a mechanical engineer, so obviously they asked me questions about thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, and just remember the basics. And like what my brother said is, just be honest. If you don't know, try to troubleshoot your way through it, and kind of say that I don't know, but this and that. You know what I mean? What else did they ask? So they're gonna ask anything that's on your resume. So whatever's on your resume, don't put anything that you can't back up. I put a lot of my experience from Toyota, so they ask a lot about Toyota, my projects when I was at Toyota. So I had to quickly, you know, remember the stuff that I did. So that's just kind of the stuff that I forgot to do, kind of be able to back up the stuff that I put on the resume. Another advice is just don't memorize common questions and answers. So be able to like answer quickly, but honestly. And also talk about those related personal projects. So like those summer projects that you guys are going to be doing, make sure it's related to the field that you're going to be in, because time is like super important. And if you're going to use your time to work on other things that's not related to what you want to do, it's kind of a waste. But at the same time, if you're having fun, do it. But as far as the interviews, it did help me a lot when I showed them pictures of my CAD designs. I showed them pictures of the stuff that I, you know, built, you know, the drones that I built, the 3D scanning, and they were very impressed with it. I'm not sure if that's what got me into the position, but who knows, right? What else? Yeah, I'll talk about those personal projects. It'll tell them that you're passionate about the field, not just you're trying to make money. Never say that you're just there to, you know, to get paid. as far as interviews, that's all I have. Overall process, yeah, 4-hour interview. Not very fun. That's my only interview experience other than the smaller stuff. I know you guys are probably gonna start working at other smaller, Baskin Robbins. I don't know.
Yeah. What do you like most about your work at Tower?
So Tower, let me go back to the slide. I would say reverse engineering because I've always been doing a lot of CAD. And anytime reverse engineering and doing CAD, but anytime I have to troubleshoot is a good thing because I know you guys in robotics, you experience so much in troubleshooting because the robots are not reliable, right? They're never reliable. So you get experience in wiring, get experience in troubleshooting, programming. When I'm at work, you don't really deal with a lot of programming. A lot of it is you have a lot of sensors, you have different things that go wrong, mechanical issues. So the troubleshooting part it makes me excited because it's like it's never the same thing every day. Because if you always get the same problem every day, then you don't really learn. So I guess, yeah, my favorite part is just learning how to troubleshoot different things. If that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. And also, what CAD thing are you most proud of?
CAD, I was trying to usually I put my stuff on Instagram and I can never extract it, but I would say anything anytime I 3D scan something, let's say I didn't talk about this one, but I recently bought an old Tacoma truck and I wanted to put a custom bumper on it, because why not? So I actually went out there, used my camera to take pictures around it, and I was able to 3D scan by, I would say, plus minus 2 millimeters. And you just put a ruler. I put a ruler right on top of it, and then that's how you scale it to the right dimensions, right? So that's being able to CAD and then make it in real life and compare it like what I did on top, that cruiser bracket. I sent it out to a company called Cut Sent. And if you guys don't know this company, they're DIY friendly. They're very cheap. This one costs about $4 to make. So if you guys need anything like metal to cut, I'm not trying to plug the company, but anyways, yeah, my favorite thing is when you go from CAD to the real stuff.
Yeah, that's so funny because actually one of our the speakers they actually recommended us Second Send. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I know how they print out anything you want, they have it for you.
Yeah.
So for all these CAD projects, did you were these for fun or were they for a purpose,
The only things that I've done for fun were the ones that I didn't get to make. A lot of these were personal projects to where I'm gonna end up making them. So I'm not sure about the bumper. That's a big project because I'll have to be welding stuff on there. The one on the top left, that's an exhaust tube that I had to actually fabricate. Let me see what that tomato thing, I didn't make that. It's pretty complicated. So it was just a CAD practice for me. But a lot of the times I use CAD I've used it when I was arranging my room, you can use it for anything. But usually I use it to make stuff 3D print stuff or actually fix things sometimes. But yeah.
Are there any more questions?
I probably have a lot more, but for now, I don't think I have any that comes to the top of my head. So,
feel free to. I'll put my email on the chat, and then feel free to email me, or I'll put my number. If you guys have Discord as well, I'll put my Discord there. Why not? I don't. Yeah, I don't really have a Discord chat server, but DM me on Discord or something. If you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, Daniel, just thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I
Yeah.
honestly didn't know what I was gonna do, so I just put a presentation together.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Your work are very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
let the audience know, the audience. Danny is my coworker. We both work in Tower, and that's why I invite Daniel to this podcast.
Yeah, she just went to my office and she was like, "Can you do a podcast?" And first I was like, I'm not a very good presentation person. Sometimes my Filipino accent comes out sometimes, and
Perfect.
I get very I get very shy. But thank you for the opportunity. Thank you guys for having me. So I was able to share my experience.
Yeah. Your experience will inspire more kids. Okay.
Yeah, I like how there's so much stuff that I can relate to with you, all the CAD stuff, and the fact that you like gaming too. You seem like a really
Awesome,
great
awesome.
person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't know how to take off my screen here. Can you kick me out or something? Oh wait, never mind. I got it.
Okay, well, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Okay, so next we'll be having Lyle talk about his college admission journey. So let's welcome. He is an alumni of Fellowship of the Robot and currently goes to Stanford, which is a really good school. And he's going to talk about how FIRST has impacted his college admissions.
Hi, so I'm Lyle, as he said, and I've been doing FIRST for 10 years now, which started with my first season of FLL in 2012. FTC 13072 Fellowship of the Robot, you might have heard of us, and I'm talking about the impact that FIRST has had on me, and as someone who has done it for more than half their life, which is weird to think about. So I'll be attending Stanford in about a month and a half to study computer science and economics, which is very exciting. And I would say that FIRST is the #1 contributing factor to my admissions decision and eventual commitment to the school. So I can't speak for every top university out there because each and every school is trying to build a unique class that gels well with itself. But in the case of Stanford, I can identify a few key contributions that my first career made to help boost my academic profile. So Stanford practices what is called holistic admission, which is a term you might see used by a lot of top universities, especially if they get a lot of international applicants. So basically what that means is that they seek to understand how you as a whole person would contribute to and thrive at the university and the impact that you can have on the university. And so there are a few core tenets that they look for to judge whether a student is fit for admission. And the first of which is academic performance. So disregard most of that if grades are not up to snuff. But secondly, the holistic part of holistic admission means that grades aren't the whole story. And that's where FIRST comes in. So Stanford heavily weighs what is called an extracurricular spike, or an activity that the student demonstrates extreme passion in and is related to their intended field of study. So they're not interested in the number of extracurriculars. They don't care if you were on student council or the president of the tabletop gaming club or anything, unless that was your spike. So my spike was FIRST, and I wrote my personal statement on the Common App essentially about the impact that FIRST had on myself and how I turned that to benefit the community. So I can talk about structuring essays in a second, but how you present the information is almost equally as important as information itself. So my essay was about the Kerrville Robotics Alliance, which if you haven't heard about by now, it is my team's 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to helping kickstart and raise funds for FLL and FTC teams in our area. And we share resources and mentoring between the teams too. So I wrote a slightly quirky essay that began with an anecdote about dressing up as Pennywise the Clown for a little girl's birthday party and how the lessons I learned from that experience helped me in running the Kerrville Robotics Alliance. So it was about providing a place for kids who felt out of place in small town Kerrville, Texas. And if you've read the book or seen the movie It, I referred to the nonprofit as the Losers Club of Kerrville, which my admissions officer particularly enjoyed. So before I get back to first, here is a quick tip on how to structure a college personal statement, at least for a school like mine. You start with a memorable hook, which was in my case the Pennywise intro, and you want to be remembered by your admissions officer as the blank kid, so a short and memorable title that one could easily pick up on from your hook. I was the Pennywise kid. From there, you want to discuss the lessons learned from your incident in the hook, how you grew from them, and how those lessons will help you stand out at the university. And the last part doesn't need to be explicit, but you will get the chance to be explicit in your interview. So back to first, I think that first as a program lends itself perfectly to the student to be able to check all of these boxes. So first, emphasis on core values is especially what sets it apart from other robotics programs. First encourages students to reach out in their community, and they judge acts of service as part of the game, basically. So having an impact in your community and writing about it well is one of the most important things you can do for your application. And the name of my nonprofit is the Kerrville Robotics Alliance. And we have a website that I can send in a second. But in my case, first was the vehicle through which I impacted my community. And as a computer science major, it was also related to my intended field of study. So first makes it really easy to have a streamlined application with diverse but cohesive strengths. Side note, when you're working on a resume, you might hear the terms hard and soft skills. So like hard skills refer to skills like programming in Java and other quantifiable skills that employers or the universities are seeking. And soft skills are more implicit skills like leadership, work ethic, adaptability, etc. And so first develops both sets of those skills in a way that's really easy to present for colleges. So you've got hard skills like CAD and Java and more that are extremely beneficial to your application and show that you took a practical skill set away from your spike to use at the university. And soft skills are built through core values and are equally as important, and they provide the groundwork for you to write an essay that has heart. And also I found that the interviews with judges through first helped me prepare for the interview that I did with alumni for Stanford. And the speaking skills that I picked up through all of those interviews translated really well. And then as for the impact that first had on me outside of college admissions, I've made some of my fondest memories in this program. Like there's nothing quite like being put up in a hotel with your friends in middle school and the shenanigans that come from that. And my worldview has even been impacted by first. So at internationals in Houston, I got the chance to talk to teams from all over the globe at the impressionable age of 13 years old. And my team ended up becoming good friends with an all-female team from Israel. And we played a lot of poker and other card games in between matches. And those conversations that we had broadened my horizons and had a huge impact on me as a person. So those were some of the ways that first impacted me and my college admissions journey. And I hope there was something in there that was helpful for anyone listening. And I can take questions if you need them. I will go and send the website link, and that's the name of it.
So what specific soft skills did you learn in first?
Overall, I think the biggest takeaway for me was that I'm now better able to lead in a way that lets individual people bring out their skills. So lead in a way that's not controlling, but is still a force that brings everyone together and towards the goal, but doesn't necessarily nudge them in any direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how did you get into first to begin with? Were you introduced by family friend or?
Yeah, so I was doing Boy Scouts in second grade, I think, and my dad went to South by Southwest for a work event, and he saw Dean Kamen had a booth at South by Southwest called Beer and Bots, and he was showing off the program and showing off the FLO robots, and my dad got to meet Dean Kamen, and it seemed like a better route for me than Boy Scouts, which wasn't really working out. So my parents always wanted me to have at least one big extracurricular. So he brought it up to me, and I thought it sounded great. So we gave it a test run, and that first year did not work very well. But after that, we got the school board involved, and it took off from there. We started KRA in 2017.
Nice. And a question from the audience: what were your roles in fellowship?
So we didn't really have roles in FLL, but FTC when we started, I was lead graphic design / communications, and then worked up to eventually last year I was team captain and programming lead. I did all the programming last year.
And going back to your Stanford interview, what specific questions did they ask, and how did you separate yourselves from, well, actually, no, it's how you separated yourself using the Pennywise thing, but like something extra that you did?
So the two main questions that you want to be prepared for in an interview is, what can the university benefit from you, and why do you want this specific university? So you want to know a lot of specific details that you can just sort of like nonchalantly bring up. But being able to tie those together in a cohesive way and not be stumbling around was something that I got from first.
And how many essays did you have to write for the application process?
For my Stanford application, I wrote the Common App Supplement, and I wrote 3 longer essays and I think 5 shorter essays. So it was a total of wait, how many did I just say? 9. It's 9 essays for that school. And then from there, I adapted those for every other school that I applied to, which was 12 in total.
And what was the application process like?
It was stressful because I was also doing robotics at the same time. But it was pretty fun at the same time because, I don't know, it was a good way to look back on everything that I had done in robotics and figure out exactly what I had learned in a concrete way.
Mm-hmm. And were you accepted into other schools?
Yes.
And
so UIUC and UNC Chapel Hill were the 2 big ones. Got waitlisted at my Ivy Leagues because they all talk to each other, and they'll usually only one of them will accept you and the other ones will be in the know that they already did that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those are the other big ones.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any more questions?
I had a question. So, when was your last year for Fright Frenzy for FTC, or was it another?
What was the game this last year? Last year was Fright Frenzy?
Yeah, Fright Frenzy.
Yeah, it was Fright Frenzy then.
Okay.
I can never remember the names because we always come up with our own names for them. Like we called this one Rover Duckus, or we just call it Rover Ruckus 2. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Our team wasn't there for Rover Ruckus, but wait, how were the 2 similar?
They used the Freight Frenzy was basically the exact same game as Rover Ruckus, but with like more inconveniences. Like Rover Ruckus, you could get cycles in way quicker, and there were a lot of specific things you had to do in Freight Frenzy that were annoying.
I think We honestly envied you because we thought you guys were like a really good team. Honestly, at
Thank
our
you.
leagues that we thought you guys were the only one who could really compete with. So I was wondering what were like your like design process like at the beginning of the year. What would you guys do?
A lot of whiteboard. We would we would sit in front of a whiteboard and pass a marker around and like literally draw out different cross sections of the robot and just throw ideas at the wall. And then that would translate into CAD. And I wasn't necessarily as active on designing the robot. So like during that time, I was working on a push bot and like getting our drivetrain set up and everything on Android Studio because it was my first year running the coding. So I had to learn all that. But yeah, a lot of whiteboard. Actually, our workshop like has 2 entire walls of it are whiteboard.
And did you guys like use like Roadrunner and all that other PID
Yeah, we used a
geometry?
bunch of PID controllers. We didn't do Odo last year because we couldn't fit it in the drivetrain. Our bot was super compact. Um, but yeah, we used a ton of PID and we did use a bit of TensorFlow as well.
And yeah, I know. So last season, like they had a barrier, and I think you guys went with a smaller chassis so it could like go across it, right?
Yeah, we
So
did.
why did you guys choose to do like the smaller one? You guys do it for speed or efficiency, you know?
Yeah, we did a double-sided intake, so we figured that most robots were going to be driving over the barrier, so if we were just ducking in by the side and we didn't even have to turn around, then it would be easy to work with us and also just as fast.
I don't know. I don't have any more questions for now.
Does anyone have any more questions? Okay, well, thank you for joining this. It's
Thank
nice
you
seeing you.
for inviting me.
Yeah,
You guys were fun to work with.
yeah. And is it okay if we share your contact information at the end of the presentation?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll go ahead and give you my Discord as well because that's helpful. And yeah, you have my phone number.
Thank
So,
you.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So we'll take a 10-minute break and then Leo will talk about some tips and tricks for FTC. We'll start back at 4. What's up, Leo?
Oh, there we go. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Okay. So up next we have Leo. He was on MacBots and also the Eliminators and currently attends Texas A&M. And he's going to talk about some tips and tricks for both on and off the field in FGC. So let's welcome Leo.
Yeah, hi guys. Like you said, I was on Eliminators and MacBots. I was also on Clash of Coders for 1 year, and I'm at A&M for biomedical engineering. And so, yeah. So what I'm going to go ahead and talk about is some of the things I did to balance FTC in school and also band at the time. And so I guess one of the things that's really important is communicating with your team and working out times that you can do stuff. Does that make sense? And like meeting times, and a lot of really good communication goes a long way with that. And also trying to get ahead of things. Like, I know a lot of us have bad habits of procrastinating stuff, and then you kind of end up in an awkward situation where a lot of your procrastinated stuff overlaps. And that's just generally really bad, because then you have a lot of stuff to do and physically not enough time in the day to do it. And so I think, yeah, getting ahead of stuff is always really good. And another thing we did, which also is really helpful with like just doing better in the game in general and also doing better as a team, is planning out some kind of timeline. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can definitely be a changing timeline, but having something that just generally structures what you want to do and the kind of time frame you want it to happen in helps out a lot, because that way you can say, hey, let's have this design done by this date. And you can always communicate, hey, I need maybe a few more days, or, oh, I'll be done a little bit early. And then you can rework that timeline, keep it moving and keep it changing and have it be very fluid. But just having that lets you balance a lot more things at the same time, because then you can work out, okay, I need to work on this for robotics and I need to work on this for school. And then you could always do your school stuff first. And I almost always prioritized school over robotics. But near a competition and stuff like that, you can always decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to put off some of my schoolwork a little bit to make sure that we're going to be in a good place with the robot. And then I'll go back and catch up on what I was behind on. But then as long as most of the time you're prioritizing school, I think you're in a good place where you're not really concerned about maintaining both. And I think that's just generally a good thing, is just to have a timeline. And then also delegation of stuff. So generally you want to have multiple people working on similar things, not the same thing, but working together on something. So designing the robot, you can delegate parts of the robot design. You could have one person designing the drivetrain, things like that. You could have a different person designing the delivery. You could have somebody in charge of, hardware and working on what parts specifically to use and things like that. Doing that helps out a lot, because in the chance that somebody is behind on what they're supposed to be doing, you're not behind on designing the entirety of the robot. You're behind on designing, just the drivetrain. And then you can have somebody who's ahead of what they're doing or on something simpler jump in, help out with that, and then get ahead of the problem and, correct for that. Especially if you get drowned in schoolwork, you can tell your team, hey guys, I'm like drowning in schoolwork right now. Can somebody help me out with what I was supposed to be doing? And a lot of the time you can actually end up correcting for a lot of those things and working those out. Yeah, that's in terms of balancing stuff. It's a lot of setting time frames, predicting how long things are going to take you within a reasonable amount. You don't have to predict, hey, this is going to take me exactly 17 minutes and 35 seconds, but just having a general idea, like, hey, I need to plan out half an hour for this, or half an hour a day. Even if you just say, hey, I need half an hour every day for a week to do this, that's a lot better than at the end of the week going, hey, I need 3.5 hours. That's a lot harder to find a 3.5 hour block of time than finding a 30-minute block of time every day. even if you miss one of those blocks, you can always say, hey, let me add an extra 30 minutes tomorrow when I don't have much homework, and I'll get ahead of the homework I would have. Just kind of blocking stuff and time management things are always really, really good for that kind of thing. I personally am probably a really bad person in terms of balancing stuff because I just let my sleep schedule get very out of hand, and I don't recommend doing that because that sucked. And it's just not generally a really good idea. I think it's a lot better to, like I said, block your time and do things like that. So a lot of this stuff is not necessarily what I did, but also what I recommend people do and what I think is better to do, because a lot of the things I did were definitely not optimal. But yeah, that's what I would recommend in terms of balancing, is just blocking your time, talking to people, delegating stuff, splitting up work, working out how you can do stuff in the most efficient way possible, basically. So just like you have to build a robot for the game and you're working out, hey, how can I make this robot the most efficient thing possible? You also want to work out, how can I make my life essentially the most efficient thing possible, especially when you're balancing things which are such huge time consumption, like school, robotics. I know some people, at least me, are in band. I know there's people in DECA and stuff, things like that. Next, I'd like to talk about, I'm always a big proponent of doing a lot of analysis and planning before you actually go into something. And so I wanted to talk about some analysis resources. So in terms of analyzing the actual game, I think one of the best things you can do is really just sitting down with your team and doing a lot of brainstorming. We always had a whiteboard for that. And in general, if you just literally every idea, a lot of people get scared of giving up their ideas because they're like, oh, this is a bad idea. This is not something I want to say. But a lot of the times that's just, that's like the opposite. Some of the best ideas I've ever had come up in FTC and even FLL when I was doing that before are just ideas that you would never even consider as a good idea. My favorite example of this is an FLL thing that I don't know if many people are going to know about, but there was this little Lego camera that you had to pick up and bring back to the start. And one of my team members, as a joke, had said, hey, why don't we just catapult the camera back to the start? And there was no rule against that at the time. Now there are rules against throwing stuff in FLL, but there wasn't yet. And so we literally just put a little hook on it and just catapulted the camera back to spawn or back to the start. And it was a lot faster and it let us do more things than just that one thing at the time. And I think there's a lot of those ideas that people come up with and they just keep to themselves because they're afraid of getting like called out for it. But if you're on a team with people if you're on a good team with good people, you really shouldn't, even if you do, it's going to be in good faith. Nobody's going to call you dumb and think you're just not a good, like not smart because you're coming up with some crazy ideas, because some of those are going to be good. And in fact, some of those are going to be ideas that other people don't come up with. Out of the box thinking is huge. And so the way I would propose to analyze the game is sit down with your team and just spit out ideas and just concepts and strategies and things that might work and you think they'll work, and just write those down, write all of them down. And then, do some kind of analysis on them. I like doing pros and cons on things and just listing out, just coming up with issues with them, coming up with benefits to doing them. Like you save time here, but it might be riskier to go for this than doing something else. And just generally having those all written down and just having those fleshed out to an extent helps a lot. And yeah, you can definitely do a lot of things just by writing stuff down, thinking about them. And honestly, I would say do some kind of basic analysis, come up with some ideas, do some basic analysis, sleep on them. And then a lot of people are going to come up with more ideas next time that are even closer to the accurate thing, because what ends up happening is you have some kind of preconceived analysis in your head, but after you do a full team analysis like that and you throw out all your crazy ideas and you realize which ones are going to be closer to working, which ones are further from working, you end up with this general direction that you start moving towards. And if you sleep on it, people come up with more directional ideas towards that typically positive direction. So as long as you do that, that's usually a really good way to analyze the game itself. In terms of analyzing strategies and working out hardware and doing design stuff and more robot specific stuff, generally FTC Discord, really useful place to be, especially for that stuff, because you can ask people, hey, what's your concept? For example, I was looking at for Ultimate Goal and specifically for Freight Frenzy, I was looking at the tracking camera, the Logitech tracking camera that I can't remember the number for. And I talked to some people and they were like, hey, this is actually pretty new. It's not very well implemented yet. This is when I was looking at it. I don't know the status on it now, but they were like, this is not very well implemented yet. It works. It's just not as consistent as doing odometry. It's easier. Like they gave me a pros and cons basically on it. It's easier because you can just strap it to the robot, download the program, you're done. But if you do odometry, for example, and you sit and tune it, it takes a lot of extra time. You have to design your pods, you have to put them on, you have to do all your tuning, you have to do all these different things, and then you end up with something that's more consistent. And so in general, it's just good to talk to other people from other teams that might have had experience with this or know people who've had experience, because if you spread things out more, you have more experience collectively and more wisdom collectively than anybody can on their own. And that's basically my concepts on analysis, is really talking to as many people as possible. That being said, with strategy and game analysis, sometimes you want to be a little bit careful about who you talk to, because if you have some kind of game breaking strategy that's going to be ridiculous and you start asking people about it, now everybody has that strategy and you lose one of your competitive advantages in the robot game. So there is an extent to where you don't want to like tell people everything you're doing. Most people wouldn't copy you, but you know, there's always some. Now, in terms of specific things that I've done in the past, and I'm going to go into a lot of specific things that I'd like to have done in the past, because some of these I didn't actually do, but I realized later on I probably should have. But one of the things I think has made us really successful, especially last year on Lemonaders, is if you design a lot of stuff ahead of time, you can make something that's really strong in the aspects that you plan and design towards. So we designed I did the design on our robot for the most part, me and Thomas mostly, and we did a lot of design ahead of time in terms of actually building and actually designing stuff. And man, that thing was a tank, because we were able to plan out for everything, and we had the concept, hey, in our heads, we had the concept, hey, for this game, we want something really strong, really fast, really powerful in order to push things, make it basically indestructible, all these different concepts. And then when you design that, because you don't have to work with some limited amount of components, or you don't have to work with what you have in front of you, whenever you're designing, you can work with literally anything. It's all up to you. And because you have that freedom, you end up designing something that's a lot more towards what you want versus what you kind of have, if that makes sense. And so just doing something like that, like a lot of planning and stuff like I was talking about earlier, lets you prioritize your goals rather than being limited by your resources. So if you focus too much on limiting yourself to your resources or working with what you have, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that. And so one of the things that I had been doing in the past is, instead of designing first, I was just building stuff, and we were just doing things without properly planning and designing them first. We would analyze the game, we would get strategies and stuff, but we wouldn't really design first. We just go for something and then work with that. And I think that's one of the key things that I wish I had just designed more. And even more than I wish I had designed, I wish I had analyzed game and stuff more. That way my concept of what the robot should be able to do and how I want the robot to do things was more fleshed out and set in my head. That way I could go and design something that's more efficient for the game, instead of designing something that I think is more efficient in the game, if that makes sense. Because when you analyze things, your thoughts get pushed in the right direction, and that's always a good thing. But yeah, that's a key thing, I think, is just spending more time planning each stage than actually doing than actually building and actually coding and actually doing all those things, because those are important and you do need to budget time. And this is why I was saying earlier, it's really important to have that kind of schedule and calendar and time frame, because if you don't have that time frame and concept ahead of time, then you risk ending up, oh, we did all this planning and stuff, but now we're behind, you know? So yes, plan, but also try to keep it within some kind of schedule so that you have time to code and you have time to drive and you have time to build stuff. And yeah, that's a key thing that I think that is really important on that. And another thing is, like I said, always, I was talking about it earlier, having a competitive advantage is extremely important. So doing what other people do, but better, is one way to win. But generally that's really difficult, especially against teams that have a ton of resources, like teams that have machining in-house and have a lot of really experienced mentors in coding and stuff. Things like that make it a lot harder to do what other teams do, but better, because generally, if everybody ran the same strategy, they'd almost always be the best at it. But if you try to come up with some out of the box ideas or things that other people just don't want to do or haven't thought of doing, and though if those ideas are good, obviously, then you end up with something that is different enough and has enough of a difference that if you lean into it, you get some kind of competitive advantage. You get something where, oh, we can do this and nobody else can. And if we lean on that a lot and we capitalize and base our strategy around that, now we can go ahead and do a lot better in the game. You can do a lot more. And so you kind of need to focus on all of your systems need to be, obviously everything needs to be efficient. Everything needs to be well designed. It needs to be consistent and it needs to be fast. But if you lean into some kind of competitive advantage and have everything be decently consistent and decently fast, you don't have to be faster than everyone else or more consistent than everyone else, unless your game strategy relies on that. You just have to be you just have to have some kind of difference, some kind of advantage over them, to where your strategy now encompasses that and relies on that and allows you to be faster overall in general. And then some other things that we talked about is off-season stuff is awesome for doing things. My team on Lemonaders, we did before last year, the off-season, me, Thomas, and some other people did a catathon over the summer where we basically designed a full-on robot for a fake game. And while I'll tell you what, it was a lot of fun. I think it was really good for at least me, just keeping some of my CAD skills sharp, learning some new stuff, focusing a little bit more on aesthetics, since it was partially an aesthetic thing, because you weren't ever going to build this robot. It was partially aesthetic. Part of it was designing stuff that's definitely over-engineered for that kind of game. But that's kind of the concept of it, is you want something more over-engineered. You want something more aesthetically pleasing. And doing that kind of things allows you to kind of view a robot in terms of design and strategy and stuff in a different light. And I think that helped out a lot in terms of being able to build a robot that was almost entirely mechanically stable and ignoring aesthetics and keeping it as simple as possible. Because if you've done something super over-engineered and you've designed it, well, now you have all the skills to make something simple and actually keep it even more simple, because you can think of, oh, I can just do this in this way. And you kind of don't overthink it because you have so much more experience in that. And so I think that's really good. In general, just make something that's more complicated than what you'll need. And if you do that, obviously I would try to focus on something that you can, and like definitely odometry, OpenCV and vision stuff. Definitely having those in your pocket and having those learned will always help out a ton in almost any game. And so obviously, if your team doesn't know how to do those, check out those. If your team needs help learning how to CAD or learning how to code and stuff like that, your fundamental skills always come first. But beyond your fundamental skills, if you can find a reason to do something over engineered, to do something that's more aesthetically pleasing than you would do. And because you have more time as well, you're not really limited to, hey, I have to have this built for League Meet 1 on this date. You know, I don't have to have it functioning, built and coded. I just have to design something because I want to for fun. Do it. CADing is great. Code an app, code some vision stuff that's like stupid and really not necessary. Code autos in the visualizer that have like ridiculously efficient splines or following items on the ground or something like that. I don't know. Just find something you can do that's beyond what you would need to do. And then when you go back, you're able to do what you have to do faster, more efficiently, better. It's just a lot of really good things to do that and kind of have some experience with doing stuff that's completely unnecessary and overly done. And then one of the other things I want to talk about, going back to like things we've done to have a good score, is I wanted to talk a little bit about drivers because I know a lot of teams, I know I've had trouble with it in the past. And I think with drivers, one of the things you need to do is look at your team holistically, see who has most experience, and talk to previous drivers that have been on your team and stuff like that, and work out who's going to be good for your team, you know? Like a lot of the times as a team, you can kind of just see, hey, this guy's going to be pretty good for helping us out and winning and driving well. And I think that's like something a lot of teams overlook, and they overdo it, and they try to plan driver tryouts and have this huge thing where you have all these like crazy requirements, and you're kind of making it to where it's not realistic in terms of what the actual driving in the game would be like. And a lot of the times all you need to do is just get a good look at your teammates and say, hey, this guy's probably pretty good at driving. This guy's probably pretty good at operating. Oh, this is definitely going to be a good coach for us. And just kind of look at your team. If you're on that team for a while, you know everybody on there, you know who would be good, who would be bad. Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah, a couple questions. So
Sure.
you mentioned something about the timeline. It's like really important. What did your timeline for your team look like?
We did a Gantt chart, and I can't tell you the exact dates on it. I don't remember. If you look up a Gantt chart, you can kind of see what that looks like. It's just a kind of a bar chart where you say, and you'll see, if you look it up, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But generally, I think we plotted, I remember some of our rebuild timelines more than I remember our initial design timelines. So I can't tell you how long we plotted for game analysis, but I can tell you it was not enough and we should have done more. For designing and ordering parts and building a robot, I think we plotted 2 weeks, and that was pretty tight. So I think generally 2.5, 2 weeks is probably a good amount of time for the physics. I would say probably plot 3 weeks for actually designing your robot, ordering parts, ordering machine CNC parts, 3D printing stuff, all of that, and then getting your robot built. All of that I think you can get done in 3 to 4 weeks, realistically. And I would probably plot a week of that to just designing, and then the rest of that can be ordering parts and stuff.
Mm.
And one of the things we did in terms of ordering parts is we just have an Excel sheet. I would fill it out with all the parts, prices, amounts, stuff like that, and just send it over to our manager that was like in charge of our money and stuff. And she would order all our parts for us.
And a question from the audience: what is one of the coolest mechanisms your team has designed?
Oh, that's hard. Hold on, give me a second. In terms of just raw mechanisms, man, that's really tough. My favorite thing I've designed, it wasn't really anything too crazy, was probably our drivetrain last year, just because it was ridiculously strong and pretty stupid fast. It was just a all aluminum drivetrain with a 3mm center drop. And it was just extremely strong. And then I think in terms of just like overall systems and like stuff like that. I really liked our Clash of Coders bot just because it was all basically self-automated and it was driving itself around effectively and aiming itself and doing all these things. And I thought that was one of my favorite things to design just because of the way the vision and the odometry interacted. But that's more of a software thing.
Yeah.
And I see William's question. You want me to answer that real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I couldn't tell you how many hours a week I'd plan out personally because I probably did a little bit overboard, but I think 5 or 6 hours a week is probably good, plus or minus, obviously. And that's going through the entire week. So I know it sounds like probably a lot right now, but at least on weekends, I would do like 2 or 3 hours just on my own at least. That's how much I would do. I definitely have done more than that. I've definitely done like 12-hour CAD sessions with Thomas and stuff, but you don't really need that. That's like definitely overboard, and just because I was bored. I think 5 to 6 hours a week is probably a good area. Maybe even 7 on a rougher week, but you can kind of feel it out depending on how much stuff you have. Like if it's a week that's focusing heavily on coding and you're on design team, you're really not going to be doing too much and you're going to have a lot less hours. But if it's a week where you got to get the robot design built, ordered parts and everything in 3 weeks, you might be working closer to that 6-7 hours a week.
Are there any more questions?
I have a question for Leo. Hello, Leo.
Hey, what's up?
You know I'm in band, and I know you were in band.
Mhm.
And at the same time of marching band season, there's also robotics. So, honestly, which one did you like more or prioritize when you had to decide between either one?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't really have a choice because our percussion director probably would have massacred me if I didn't show up to band rehearsals and stuff. So a band was always a priority there. And especially because I think the way I like to think of it is not necessarily which one I like more, but my band was what, 300, 400 kids. And so if I'm not showing up and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing there, if I'm missing competitions and stuff like that, then now I'm letting down another 300, 400 kids, versus if I'm a little bit behind on my robotic stuff, I can always ask, hey, Thomas, can you cover this for me? I'm swamped with homework and band this week. I really don't have much time. Can you design this part of the robot for me? And then Thomas might be like, oh, dude, come on. And then he'll do it. And we're not even really that far behind, So I would always put band first because it's a bigger organization. But in terms of like what I practice for band or what I do robotic stuff first, I would probably say do robotic stuff first and then practice depending. Those two were kind of on an equal level for me, to be real with you. So I kind of look at which one I'm more behind in and do that.
Got another question. Did you do any off-season competitions in FCC?
No, I didn't. Not personally. Like I said, I did that catathon. That was a lot of fun. I did some open CV work the year before Ultimate Goal. And then I don't remember what I did off season before that. I remember James designing, I think this is all James. James designed some cool mechanism and 6-wheel drives. It's just that's what I think you should do. I've done a little bit of stuff, but that's what I think you should do. I designed an app for OpenCV just to look at the different options and filters and stuff you can mess with on it. But yeah.
Are there any more questions? Well, thank you, Leo, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. See you later. Good luck.
Yeah, see ya. So thank you, all of the audience members. Thank you for joining today. I know it's been really long, 4 hours, but thank you for joining. And also thank you to all the speakers for just giving out all of their expertise and sharing all of their information with us. And here's the contact information for all of the speakers, including the team, if you want to get into contact with any of them. I'll stay on this slide for a while. And you guys can leave whenever you feel like it.